It's time for Windows Weekly. Paul Thurrott and Richard Campbell are here. Coming up, Paul, 1 week later, takes a look at the Copilot Plus PCs. He's getting better battery life, that's for sure. Notepad finally supports spell check. It's a whole new world out there. And we'll talk about the new pricing for Xbox Ultimate. All that and more coming up next on Windows Weekly.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
This is Windows Weekly with Paul Thurrott and Richard Campbell, episode 889, recorded Wednesday, July 10th, 2024. Works best with Netscape. It's time for Windows Weekly, the show where we cover the latest news from Microsoft and a few Microsoft OEMs today. Paul Thurrott is there, not here. He's in New York, covering some event. Is it an HP event? Or is that what you're there for?
Yep.
Richard Campbell has decided his decline. He has decided to remain in Madeira Park, British Columbia.
And why wouldn't you? Because the views,
like the recluse that he is.
There you go. Why would you leave that, right? Yeah, you're not going to leave that.
The loons, Norman, the loons.
Yeah.
I picture
beautiful.
Richard living in a room with like People magazine stacked up from the 70s and the newspaper comes every day.
National Geographics.
Not so much. No,
That is truly gorgeous.
It's mostly empty whiskey bottles, to be honest. But,
And of course, Paul, it's 87 degrees and muggy in New York. And Richard, it's probably 67 degrees and breezy in BC.
It's 29.
29. Oh, well, warming up.
We had to bite the air to get through it. It was, it's a little muggy here.
It's thick. Hey, I did want to tell you, I wish I'd known that you were going to be in New York because I just got word from the Yale Club they're relaxing the dress code.
Are you serious?
Yes. So it was a big article in the New York Times.
Yeah.
Because nobody's joining those Ivy League clubs.
Yep.
Because they had a dress code.
I don't have any ascots. It was a problem.
Paul very famously stayed at the Yale Club in New York many years ago now. Attempted to eat breakfast. What were you wearing?
I stepped out. I was wearing this like a polo shirt and jeans, and I stepped out of the elevator into where it's not like calling it. It's where people were eating. It was an elegant room,
The breakfast
But as
room.
the door is closing behind me, I'm scanning the room, and everyone in there is wearing a suit. And I was like, oh no. And I'm trying to hit the button on the elevator, make it come back. And the guy walks up, he says, sir. And I'm like, I know. Don't even tell me. I know. I'm leaving. And he says, a polo is the minimum.
Nice.
Wow. Well, now the polo.
I got bum rushed.
Yeah, is no longer the minimum. Big news in the Yale Club group. we were all talking about it the other day. They're going to let people like Paul Thurrott in.
Yeah, exactly. This is like
my God,
the rabble.
Yes.
Yep.
So you're calling this episode the morning after.
Yeah. Well, sometimes you get like overly exuberant about something, and then the next day you're like, oh crap, what have I done? This isn't like that.
Good news.
Yeah.
Not like that at all.
It's good. It's all good. In fact, it must be in here. Yep. So as we'll get to, something really interesting is happening with these Snapdragon PCs, which I think in the history of our industry is actually kind of notable. And I'm in the middle of writing like a gigantic article about that, but we'll get to this anyway. So a couple of things just in the wake of last week's 2-hour overview of the computers I have. I'll try to cut this one shorter. Things are proceeding nicely. Everything's good. I keep waiting. There hasn't really been an Achilles heel type thing. The Surface laptop I'm using has gotten up to over 11 hours of battery life now.
Wow, that's good.
So it's learning you, right, and getting a little more tuned.
Well, I'm slowing down my more spastic testing. I'm using it more normally. Maybe is the way to put it.
Right.
So that's kind of neat. look, I get it. I'm part of this community. There is an exuberance occurring now, and people are starting to get a little ahead of themselves. And we're starting to see editorials about this where it's like, Intel's doomed. It's over. x86 is dead.
Nice.
And yeah, not so much, guys. I mean,
predictions of my demise are greatly exaggerated.
Yeah, I mean, you gotta remember something. Intel in this industry is dominant. I know people in the tech industry will have a hard time with this comment, but they actually have a pretty good reputation among normal people. They're in the sense that people understand the whole Intel inside thing, and they think that's what you want, and they don't know any better, maybe, but whatever.
Well, and we've already seen sample quantities of Lunar Lake with great rapport.
Yeah, and we shouldn't leave AMD out of this discussion, but it's not anyone's fault, but they often do get left out because for whatever reason, they're still kind of also rans, which is too bad because they make terrific chips. And I was just talking to someone.
Part of the PC master race of gamers says, AMD and Ryzen are nothing, right? Like
so
that is its own sweet
AMD
rig.
gaming machine. It's very nice.
Yeah. So the computer I'm using today for this podcast, because I have to use a Focusrite, and Focusrite does not work with ARM computers yet. Is
that true? That's good to know, because that's what the gear we send out.
It's the one major hardware.
That's funny
Bluff I've run into. Yeah.
Okay.
Because there are others. I've talked to a few folks now that are missing stuff that plugs in and is not happy.
Huh. It's
I think the weirder you get,
a driver issue, right?
It's a driver issue, 100%.
It's drivers,
But that's a standard USB driver, I would think.
I know. It just doesn't work.
Let us speak of this standard use that you mentioned.
What is this standard use?
Well, look, since 2000, whatever, 16, 17, 18, whatever it was, or since 2012, certainly, Microsoft has done a tremendous job of making sure that the most common devices are served by class drivers that work really well.
Right.
And I was surprised. So, for example, we have 2 HP all-in-one network attached printers at home, and they both work fine, came right up. And that I expected. They both scan and print. I haven't tried faxing. It is 2024. But the HP has custom software, and it's x64 software. I checked, and it works fine with these devices. So the software must just be a front end to whatever the back end drivers are, et cetera, or whatever. But I expected that not to work. But if you want to do things like in the scanning app, for example, you can, have it auto crop when it scans, which is a feature you need that software for, works absolutely fine. So my success rate with hardware and software has been nearly identical in both cases for me so far, unless I'm forgetting something. I've only found one software piece, this app or whatever that I rely on that does not work, which, integrates with the file system. That makes sense. And I found the one hardware device, which is this Focusrite, that does not work. And so, I don't know. It's not, look, in the old days, and by the old days, I mean the 1990s, I would go to Best Buy with a printout of a portion of the Windows NT 4.0 hardware compatibility list.
Nice.
And I would find the one network card they had, or the one, whatever it was I was buying at the time that worked. I'd go down, does this one? No. Okay. How about, no, this one. And then you'd find the one that did work, and you'd bring that home, and that's what you would use. This is way better than that. And it's certainly better than, RT or the early days of Windows 10 on ARM. So I look, especially this audience, people watching and listening to the show, we're going to have some esoteric, 3D printers or whatever they might be. Yes, you could run into some problems, but I bet most of you guys have more than one computer too. You'll be okay. It's not like
it's your only machine.
Yeah, you're going to be fine.
But we're still battling this core classic issue of every restricted version of Windows, which is like 95% of what you need is working fine. But the 5% that doesn't work, you really need it. You needed it. And it's all different.
Yeah. This is I don't know if this is ironic or hypocritical, or I don't know what to call it, but it is very interesting to me that the most technical people will probably have the hardest time in a way, which is not the way it should be, right? Because we tend to use more of those kinds of devices.
But we also have lots of machines. So it's like it can sit over there. And when I have to do it I'll do it a different way. Yeah.
Well, So here, just to kind of put this in perspective slightly, I guess, last night I opened up my MacBook Air, which I hadn't opened in several days. Came right on, by the way. Kind of a neat feature to look for in a PC. And, I signed in and I plugged in I have a little Samsung, I think it's a T2 SSD, whatever, 2 terabytes. It has my photo collection on it. I wanted to upload it to iCloud or whatever. Could not see this thing for some reason. It couldn't work. I was like, what's going on here? Like I kept plugging it, nothing, unplug it, nothing, So I plugged it into a real computer, a Windows computer, and it has BitLocker on it. That's why. And BitLocker does not work on the Mac. And okay. So
Samsung used to have its own encryption, but you used BitLocker on that one.
I used BitLocker because,
the T2 used to come with its own thing, But yeah.
I would never trust any Samsung stuff.
I took it off. I take it off immediately.
So yeah, okay. I mean, the point of the morning after headline here was simply that it's a week later. It's 2 weeks since I got the first computer, 3 weeks since these things came out. I would say the story is pretty consistent. You don't come here for the AI. It's not horrible, but it's not the reason to spend $1,000 or $1,500 on a computer. When it can play a game, it's actually pretty magical. But yeah, that's like throwing eggs in the air and trying to catch something. Like it doesn't work a lot, and it's not the reason to buy one of these things. But the reason you buy it is because of the thing I just talked about. You open the lid, it comes on. The battery went down by maybe 2% overnight. The battery life is somewhere in the 10 to looks like 12-hour range now. Maybe we'll see. Super reliable, consistent, just works kind of thing. I'm just not used to this in the Windows world. I keep flinching, like waiting for something to smack me in the face. But
where's my blue screen?
It's been good.
Here's the thing, though, that I think everybody really wants to know is how does it run Linux?
Well, Leo, I'm glad you asked. No, I'm not. No, right now it doesn't, but it will, right? Because Qualcomm has been working with the Linux community from the beginning, and they're very upfront about this. They have a website about this. They've spoken at Linux trade shows, and in fact, I watched a talk a guy gave back in I think April, where they will ensure that all of the hardware is 100% Linux. All the drivers will be there. It's going to be part of the kernel. It's all happening like they're doing it.
Yeah.
I'm also surprised that the dev kits haven't shipped. Like, what's the delay on the dev kits?
I put in my address. Did you get an email or anything yet? I mean, I
just an email to say wait for an email.
Wait for an email. Here comes another one.
Yep.
Okay.
Oh, good. They're emailing. Oh, we're going to email you later. We haven't forgotten you. Yeah, this is surprising. It might just be a supply issue. They want to get them out to the OEMs, maybe.
Yeah. That's not a bad thought, or the pipeline's just full right now, or they found a glitch in their implementation. Like
this isn't going to last. But in June, Qualcomm controlled 20-something% of the PC market by unit sales in June. Usually it's I'm going to round it up 0%. So it was a big change.
It was a burst.
Yeah, I don't know what 0 times 20 is, but it was that much. No, it was a big change.
Qualcomm says on its Linux support page that Linux support is coming pronto. It literally says pronto.
So literally pronto. Yeah. So we sort of have this understanding that Lenovo and Qualcomm rather and Microsoft have this agreement, and you can see the public impact of it in that like Copilot Plus PCs are exclusively Qualcomm based right now, right? Intel, AMD, and then the PC makers will come out with capable like Copilot Plus class PCs soon, but we actually still don't know if they're going to be called Copilot Plus PCs, at least in the beginning, because there's clearly some exclusivity thing going on. We just don't know.
I think this is a deal with Snapdragon.
That's the question. Is it like marketing like Evo where they do co-marketing dollars, or is there really something in there?
Yep.
Because if we're only talking about tops, like my RTX kicks ass.
Oh, yeah. It's actually not a lot of tops, to be honest.
Yeah. Listen, you GPU tops loving idiot. No, you're right. Look, this will change. We just don't know what the terms are, but I think to the Linux point, don't be surprised to discover that is part of the same arrangement. That on the flip side, Microsoft's like, you're going to put it in Linux, but let's have an exclusivity window for Windows as well, right?
Yeah.
We want to get this thing out in the world.
Yeah.
And look, it's there's no doubt. No one has said this, but absolutely, Chromebook Plus devices will be running on this platform too. And we'll see. It's just we just don't know when, right? Because we're in this little window. We don't know when it closes.
Yeah, just wondering if they're holding,
happens.
if this is actually slowing adoption. Like I'm watching some of these other reviews, and they're complaining about things where I'm like, that is an ARM. That's not Snapdragon. That's Windows 11 that you're complaining.
I know.
About.
Yeah. A lot of these reviews are coming from kind of like non-Windows guys, right? Which is absolutely fine. We need those people just for comedy, really. But they, it's like.
The ads bother you in the startup menu?
I wish that, God, if only someone had highlighted that earlier. But yeah, thank you for finally bringing it up. I wish. I feel weird. Like I find myself being the people who must read my stuff. You can feel them getting upset, like literally in real time, and they're like, "Oh, the emulator is terrible." You're like, wait, what? No, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, these apps, I use all these apps. None of them work great. And then they list the apps. You're like,
what are these?
Using Windows for 35 years. I've never heard of any of these apps. What are you talking about? Like, so, like, again, in technical circles, you're going to run into people who have, whatever specific needs.
But yeah, this realization that you're talking to a Linux ARM person who this is a hot new ARM device, so they want to take it out for a spin. And now they're really experiencing Windows 11 for the first time.
I can tell you that if I was a Linux guy, and Leo, you might want to take the stance yourself. I think this would be the beautiful thing to do in public.
Does a stance
be
look
like
this? Oh, sorry.
No, well, it does, yeah. Except we need to see your behind at the time. The stance should be, Snapdragon and ARM is pretty cool, but I'm holding out for RISC-V. Like that. This is clearly where it's gonna. If when the kernel is written in Rust and it runs on RISC-V, then we can talk.
So there is a RISC-V PC out there, and I saw a review that said it's slower than a Raspberry Pi 4. So I'm not rushing. I'm not rushing to RISC-V.
Yeah.
I think this is anyway. Look, there are, as with anywhere, there are Linux people who are purists and so forth, and they're going to use RISC-V. But I think most users say, I would love this chip is a nice chip. Apparently, I would love to see how it runs Linux, and Qualcomm's very committed to that. Qualcomm, remember, makes chips for Android devices. That's its big business. Those are all Linux devices. So it's not not impossible at all.
Yeah, they're in that world. They're not. Yeah,
they know
they're not throwing away 2 billion devices a year to go to 20 million Windows devices. Like, no offense, like,
exactly.
Just saying.
Although, by the way, one might wonder. I've wondered. They must have invested several $1 billion over the past few years in this. What's the payoff, right? And the payoff actually is that will be the base architecture for their mobile chips going forward too. So this is all going to pay off. Even if, Windows and ARM doesn't, although I think it will.
Yeah. It's not, this is, as people keep quoting, it's like, this is not the first attempt at ARM with Windows. Not that they have direct lineages. I don't know. There's a lot of RT code here. Like they are doing
re-implements. I can't imagine there is actually.
Yeah.
Boy, I have so many thoughts. So I'm writing a very long piece about that history, and probably going to roll it somehow into Windows everywhere. I'm not sure how I'm going to do that, but there's a lot of interesting stories there.
Yeah.
One that people may forget is that Microsoft announced to the public that this was happening. They didn't call it Windows RT yet, but Windows on ARM, as they called it, in February 2012, I think. Like shortly before, the year that Windows 8 and RT shipped. It was not that long before.
Right.
But the summer before, there were actually like announcements that didn't make any sense. Qualcomm and Microsoft announced an expanded partnership in the middle of the summer of 2011 that was about PCs. And I think, at the time, they were partnering with Qualcomm on Windows mobile devices. So I think a lot of people sort of said, well, this must be something related to that, whatever. But the initial plan was to go to market with PCs based on NVIDIA, Texas Instruments, if you can believe that, and Qualcomm-based chips. And in the end, Not that Microsoft says it this way officially, but there was so little support for this, they just had to go with the one, and they picked NVIDIA because they were the most willing to work with small numbers, I think is the only way to say it. I mean, it's just, Qualcomm wants, 20 partners and everyone's involved and they want the whole shebang, So anyhow, so that's a fun thing. And by the way, this isn't in the notes either, but you've reminded me of this. This came up somewhere, I don't even remember where, but everybody seems to know that Windows 11 on ARM 24H2 has this Prism emulator, which is the new version of the x64/x86 emulator for ARM. This is a Microsoft design product. It's not actually from Qualcomm, although sometimes it looks like it is. It's not. It's from Microsoft. It is part of Windows 11 24H2.
Right.
And that means that if you have an older ARM device, one of you 17 people out there who have like a Snapdragon 8CX Gen whatever, or a Microsoft Surface Pro X SQ2 or 3 or whatever those chips were called, whenever you do get 24H2, you will in fact get the Prism emulator. So you will see an improvement. It will not be like it is for Snapdragon X. And in fact, there are certain features of that emulator that require Snapdragon X, but it actually is going to be available to everyone. So I did do that upgrade on I think it's a Snapdragon 8CX Gen 2 based laptop over the weekend because, that's how I spend my free time.
Although in general, it seems like the ARM stuff pipeline for both Windows and apps is not integrated with the rest of the Windows pipelines. These separate ISOs, separate web pages, separate entries in the store. Like in general, it seems like they've kind of left ARM isolated rather than just saying, oh, it's the same link, but I can see you're using ARM. I'll send you there.
I feel like that is a bit of a mess. And I wish that was clearer. And I can't say 100%, but I feel like most of the time, if it is in the store, if the ARM version, you do get it. Mm-hmm. But I have run across examples where it just says x64. I have downloaded it. I got x64, and I know there's an ARM version. I wish there was and I guess the point is it shouldn't matter because to most normal people, you don't think about this stuff and you just get something and it works and you don't care. And honestly, the emulator is good. We all have this vague idea that running apps in emulation will hurt battery life. I've never seen anyone come up with any data to support that. I'm sure it's true, but it's hard to measure because, we all have different workloads. We all run some different combination of apps, and you can't do exactly the same thing. So over some period of weeks, you'd have to test different combinations of it. I don't know how you would do it.
I think it's a rationalization, right? Like I have seen numbers where it's like, here's 2 apps running on the Elite X. One of them is the emulated one. One of them is the native ARM one. And the ARM one is twice as fast. Twice they're probably consuming the same amount of power to do that because it's just fewer compute cycles, right? You don't have that additional.
So I mentioned this, and no one would remember this because it was such a throwaway. But back around the time of Build, probably at Build, there was one Microsoft blog post that mentioned that some AI feature in, I think, Windows 11 or maybe Copilot, whatever it was, consumed some amount of watts of energy when it was run.
Right.
And it was a really small number. And that was the point. And I was like, we need this measurement for everything now. And that to me, that should be in Task Manager, right? You should be able to monitor that and then run a report and get an idea of how efficient this thing is going. Because this is the soft underbelly of Snapdragon X that doesn't get talked about talked about enough because no one understands it, is the efficiency bit.
Yeah.
And from an efficiency standpoint, efficiency is a hard thing to define. We talk
what
about
you saying when you say
or,
efficiency, right?
Like what do you mean by efficiency, right? So performance per watt is one kind of a way to measure some form of efficiency, but
and that's challenging too, because what do you mean by performance? Like, is this a clock cycle? But the instructions said it's simpler, so I need more.
How do you not know that? Yeah. No, it's crazy, right? You're right. There's no way to define it. So, you can, but you can't. It's very hard to define at the processor level. You need to really define it at a workload level. It's like, I am doing this task. It's also
running this benchmark.
we have Windows PCs, right? So there's a million points of failure, and there's not a million, but there are many points where a slightly slower type of RAM could bog things down and make things less efficient or whatever. There's a lot that goes into it, which is
bad
actually
drivers.
Yep. There's all kinds of things that could play into, like, oh, for some reason on this one computer, even though it looks like most of the stuff is identical to this other computer, it's the battery runs out 2 hours earlier or whatever it is, right? So
I was on a Teams call with a person who will remain nameless, who was doing it from a Snapdragon device. And halfway through the call, the video shifted to the left and turned pink. And for about 10,
I've
10
done that
minutes
after a long night out, but you don't expect that.
I did that Saturday night.
Then it recovered on its own, right?
Oh,
and I'm
very
like,
nice.
Okay.
Dude, that was a driver reset after a memory leak. 100%.
Here you go.
Yeah.
Nice.
Like I've written that software.
Good diagnostics.
Right? I can't fix the actual problem for whatever reason. So I put a watcher in, and as soon as certain things happen, you just restart it.
Yeah.
I've been working on modernizing this, .NET app that I have. .NET is not an efficient app. If you're looking for something that can display a text document and kill your battery, I have an app for you. It's great.
Got it nailed.
The thing that's interesting about it is
you've written the flash of text viewers. I love it.
Yeah, it's WPF, but it's I've output x86, x64, and ARM64 versions of it, and they're all just as terrible as each other, honestly, from a footprint perspective.
Equal mediocrity. That's very nice.
Yeah. Well, that's, I'm looking for consistency, so that's working out good. But yeah, as far as if many people will know that historically, this is changing a little bit these days, but Intel has long had this U series processor. This is what came out of the Ultrabook stuff, Evo, Leo mentioned earlier. These are typically, but not always, 15-watt parts, right? But they run in a range of heat dissipation, of wattage, right? So under load, that thing, depending on the chip, depending on the generation, could, consume 28 watts or 30 watts or 35 watts or whatever it might be. There are versions that run on, I want to say 7 or 9 watts, really low end, passively cooled devices. This has changed over the years, but like an H series chip typically would be these days 56 watts, but those things 100 watts, 108 watts, depending, you're running a game, it's probably even more, especially with the GPU, right? For a little while we had P series because as they changed architecture, things got a lot less efficient. They had to slat something in the middle, and most mainstream computers went from U to P series for a couple of years there. I think 11, 12, maybe 13, 12, 13, whatever it was. Whatever. So things are changing. It's hard to measure these things. But people are finally, Ryan Trout was talking about this, and now we're starting to see labs finally measuring this stuff. So I'm not going to remember the numbers off the top of my head, but like a MacBook Air, very consistent, low wattage under whatever load. It doesn't matter. It's just very efficient. Intel chips are all over the map. I mean, they're literally, it's like a splatter pattern of machine gun fire. They're everywhere. And then Snapdragon X is better than Intel and AMD. Overall, right? Not always. I mean, but it also run, these are, I want to say, I think they're 28, 20, 30, somewhere in there watt part. They're not very low wattage parts like you might assume, like actually the M3 is, right? And they can get up to, depending on the model of the chip, like 80 watts or more, under load. Because that's, they're emulating x86, it's a big deal. Like it has to do this right.
They want to emulate it like the power hog that it is. Yes.
But they want the software.
I'm doing my best P4 impression here.
It's an accurate emulation.
Well, you want it to just work, and just work means a lot of things, but it means
a lot of
you don't wait 10 seconds for the app to load, right? So we're going to fire up the engines, So it is. This is a major step forward. It's not really the equivalent of the M3 on depending on how you look at it, but nobody cares about this stuff, right? I mean, the truth is, what we care about is battery life and literal real world performance. it'd be nice if the fan didn't, it didn't sound like a jet engine, and it doesn't. On none of these computers, it does. That's been great. So, yeah, it's definitely a step forward. We're not done. We didn't win. It's not over. And Rich had said this earlier, but Luna Lake is coming, and who knows? It's Intel. They could totally face rake, but they're going to get it right eventually.
They also will try again, right? Like that's
right.
The whole thing. It's like the good thing about this competition is it pushes all of them to be better.
And there is this thing in the PC world where there are different kinds of PCs for different kinds of needs, and for gamers, workstations, creators, people, whoever needs a dedicated GPU, there are options, lots and lots of options, and those don't exist on Snapdragon X. I mean, maybe they will someday, but they do not now. They don't on Apple either. So
no, certainly as soon as you get into that exotic, like being a streamer, you need a lot of external hardware, and that stuff is not good right now.
Yep. Yeah. So look, this is so much better than it ever was. And for me personally, and I think for a lot of people,
from the perspective of other ARM devices, not so much from this is not the best PC you've ever owned yet.
Well, I got to tell you, there are different ways to measure that, right? I did this demonstration live for Mary Jo. I opened the computer and I said, "Did you notice anything?" She goes, "Yeah, it came right on." I said, "Yeah, it did. It does that every day." I didn't open it yet today. I stuffed it in a bag. I drove 2 hours. I came to your place and I opened it and it came on. Yeah.
Was it screaming hot when you took it back out of the bag?
Nope. It was absolutely fine.
And the battery was near death.
And so cute. It's just
but that is
a Windows miracle.
One doesn't realize like what you put up with every day. This miracle that Windows does anything. And then you see something that actually works and you're like, wait a minute, it could be like this. It's special. Like that really means a lot to me. I review a lot of laptops. I got to tell you, some of them are not great. The really bad ones you don't really hear about because I'm like, I'm not even writing about this.
You don't want me to write about this. It's not good.
So
the ugliest laptops I ever saw were the laptops just before the iPad, like in early 2010. Those big plastic jobbies, like they're trying to make the $500 laptop, and by golly, they were horrible.
Yeah, the little Toshiba things with like an 8-inch screen and This is a great computer to buy if you hate yourself. Yeah, it would run like Windows XP Starter Edition, even though it was like 15 years later.
Yeah.
Well, we've come a long way, but look, AMD, Intel, they are getting their act together. And this is the thing I think that people don't quite understand is, Snapdragon X is not a wake up call to Intel. They got that wake up call about 2 years ago, right? Granted, they should have gotten it 15 years earlier. I'm not going to dispute that. Microsoft begged these people to get their act together, but with regards to mobility and efficiency, and they were just like more cores. It's an addictive drug, but there's been some stumbles. I think we're going to look back at Meteor Lake as a kind of a nadir of sorts, but it doesn't matter. Whatever, it doesn't matter what your opinion is of that. It's just that, they have moved to a hybrid architecture. They went to another one and now they're going to a third one. So they're trying, actually technically fourth, it doesn't matter, but they're switching things up, and the chances of Intel landing in a good place are actually pretty damn good. I'm just saying. So again, if they don't ever have to be as efficient as an M3 or M4 or whatever, they don't ever have to be able to provide the 15 or whatever hours of battery life, as long as they can be in the ball game. And come on, we would be silly to think they're not going to.
Anything as long as a work day, you're probably good.
Yep. Yeah. Right. What's the definition of all day battery? It's not 24 hours.
No.
Sorry, it just isn't. And by the way, and this is very lucky on Intel's part, but thanks to the pandemic and all of the changes that have occurred since, a lot of us are not far from power a lot of the time now. And, that busy business guy traveling on planes, and they still exist, but it's not like it was before.
No.
I mean, Richard is a dramatic exception to that rule, but I'm
not the guy who cracks his laptop on the.
Okay. There you go. Yes. I use laptop all the time on planes, but but I don't travel as much as I used to, for work. I just don't. And I think that's more common these days. So anyway,
I do think it's changed.
Just one one final thing. Well, not one, actually, but there's a few more things, I guess. Just real quick. It is one of my takeaways from this stuff is that it is astonishing to me how similar these computers are. This was something Microsoft tried to do with Windows RT, which is the reason there were only 2 devices at launch that weren't called Surface. And then maybe one more in December that year. And then it kind of just tapered off because nobody wanted to do it because, Microsoft went to these PC makers and said, look, we know you like to differentiate, but what we really need in this industry is what we have on phones, which is reliability, consistency, instant on, always on connectivity, et cetera, et cetera. We can't do that if you guys are screwing around with your stupid drivers and putting other weird, shopping for the cheapest components. Like we actually have to have a kind of a high quality, consistent board here. And we want you all to, use the same one basically. And then they laughed and, and Microsoft said, no, we're not joking. So nobody wanted to do it. But I think the conditions of the past 12 years, and I think some of the reliability stuff on the Intel side especially has maybe convinced them otherwise. So there's actually a lot more support for these or for this platform, right, than there ever was before. And yes, part of it is Qualcomm waking up to what Intel has always done, which is to pay people to use their platform. But you got to get this thing out in the world, and it has to be a thing. It can't be 12 different things, So it's weird to me. I mean, again, reviewing as many laptops as I do, there's not a lot of inconsistencies between the computers.
No.
Like, I mean, they look a little different, right? Because everyone has their own style. But
yeah, they all got their styling. But I was surprised to see that that Lenovo made both a ThinkBook and a Yoga, and that HP's also made an Elite Book as well as an Omni.
That's right. So, so they're hitting both sides of the.
Yeah, I almost wonder if it was a requirement, right? Because it's clearly a case for Copilot in the business setting as well as Copilot in the personal setting.
Yep. Yeah, and the AI stuff. This is
this is the joke of this entire thing, right? Is what AI stuff.
Yeah. When you look at each of the 3 major generations of Windows and ARM, there's always been a marketing point of it, right? In the beginning, it was pretty pure in the sense that it was like, look, this is stuff happening on mobile that is super desirable. We want to have part of that. And it was all good. Like they did it wrong, and we can talk about that. But we're going to have apps that go to sleep and instant on, really good power management, great battery life, et cetera. Like these are all, everyone wants this, right? Consistent, reliable, great. And it failed because of apps, right? Apps didn't work. So, Windows 10 on ARM was like, no compromises, except for performance.
Yeah. But other than that.
Unless you include compatibility and performance. Other than that, it's great.
It's actually remarkably compatible,
so
given how different.
Yeah, though the way it works now is astonishing, and it's again, not perfect, but my God, much better place.
Who among us is? I ask you.
Right. Well, yeah, right. Made by humans, it's going to be flawed. What are you going to do?
Gonna be.
Except for Apple stuff, that stuff's perfect. But anyway, IDC, Bloomberg, they're all saying what everyone who's used one of these things is saying, which is that, look, we can talk about AI all you want. The truth is, this is an interesting point. I'm surprised this didn't occur to me, but all the big companies, software companies like Adobe that are doing AI, and Adobe's doing a ton of AI, are doing a lot of NPU-based AI, right?
Yes.
Even though you can make the argument that there's a good case for that in some cases, like for things like video rendering, et cetera. And they'll get there. But right now, Adobe's thing is like, we get people with actual computers, and we want to help them wherever they are.
They're running it on against CUDA, and CUDA runs on a lot of machines.
Yep. And that's how we're doing it. And it is an interesting fact that if you look at not 100%, but if you look at a lot of the companies that are supporting NPU, whatever it is, it's like these smaller companies that most people have never heard of, Right. I remember the day of that Copilot launch, Copilot Plus PC launch, Microsoft, I've already forgotten the name of it, Microsoft, which has an AI video editor of its own called Clipchamp, promoted another one with an equally stupid name. And it was because this small company that no one's ever heard of, that does AI-based video editing, put a couple of their operations against the MPU.
Right.
It's killing me. I can't think of the name of this app. It's actually pretty good, by the way. It's called CapCut. Yeah. So if you thought ClipChamp was a beautiful name, you'll love CapCut.
I actually started using
CapCut
CapCut because I couldn't remember ClipChamp, and I thought it was CapCut.
Yeah. And you ran into it.
Yeah.
That was my first old guy moment in the 1990s. I went into a Best Buy and I couldn't find a CD. I knew it started with C. And the guy said, "Can I help you?" And I said, "I'm looking for a CD." I forget what I said. I said something. I think the band's called Collective. I said something like Collective Tour, Collective something. He goes, "You mean Collective Soul?" I'm like, "Yeah, maybe." And so CapCut, ClipChamp, whatever. Like it's
whatever.
The kids are using it.
Whatever.
So there is there are some apps that take advantage of this stuff. They tend to be from smaller companies. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Mm-hmm. But it is perhaps notable that the bigger software companies are not really doing too much with NPU.
All of it, many of Adobe's tools are, as they say, on the web, in your web page, because it's cloud only. Right? All of their podcast AI stuff, cloud only.
I feel like for this stuff to be mature, it should use what you have. And that goes to your point earlier about the GPU too, by the way, right? So if you're using Adobe Premiere and you're rendering video, actually it does use a GPU today, right? That already does. So where's the NPU? That's pragmatic.
That's not machine learning models either, right? You're talking about Photoshop, Premiere, like they've been doing those renders for a long time. Yeah. That's all ray trace work. But their new machine learning models like the podcast AI stuff is all web only.
We'll see what it's like in real life. The message that Apple gave at WWDC I thought was a good one, which was, look, for privacy reasons, we're going to do as much as we can on the device. And when we can't, we're going to have to hand it off to the cloud. Yep. And when we do, that's going to be your choice, right? And so when I'm using like Adobe Photoshop, let's say, to do some kind of a AI video or photo edit thing, if I have the MPU, it'd be nice if that thing was a little faster because I had an MPU, right?
Right.
The reality is with these first gen Snapdragon Snapdragon X-based PCs, you can actually see what it's like to do stuff off an MPU. And depending on what it is, it can be really good or really terrible, right? So for example, I can go to Copilot in the cloud. I don't have any AI anything on my device. I can do it from my phone. Mm-hmm. And I can say, make me a photo, and I do my little prompt, and it makes me this gorgeous Renaissance art thing that's unbelievable, and then I can change the style. But I can also go into Paint on a Snapdragon X-based PC, and I have a co-creative feature, and I can do the same thing. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm describing a Photos feature. There's an image creation feature in Photos, which works off the MPU. So it uses SLMs on your device instead of LLMs in the cloud. And when I give it that nice, gigantic prompt that's really detailed, I get a piece of garbage in return because it's working off an SLM. It's not as good. And the example, the one I remember because I used it for an article, was I had a detailed prompt about a market full of baskets of apples with light shining in from the top. And there was one apple with a bite out of it in the middle. And I got these gorgeous pictures of markets with the apple like I asked for from Copilot. But when I did it on the PC locally, I got one apple in the middle of a blank space, sometimes not with a bite taken out of it. Okay. Not what I asked for, So
this is how we're going to know if it's running local or not. Did it suck? Then it's local.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So look, it's not 100%. I don't mean to disparage local AI. Honestly, the Windows Studio Effects things are pretty good. That live translation
customer's not going to care. This was the whole point with the cloud. Just do the thing. Why do I think about where it's running? Like, I don't care.
I know. Yeah. I would like to know that I spent some money on a new computer, so everything I do is going to be better. Whatever that means, faster, whatever, right? It should just always be better.
Evidence of this that Copilot Plus AI gave, or the Copilot Plus PC gave me anything. Just anything, other than it's an ARM machine. And then mostly we gave boost driver compatibility
efficiency,
problems.
better life. Because so far, look, is 3 weeks enough data to be like, oh my God, these things are so reliable?
No.
Yeah, I mean, they are right now. I mean, we'll see, right? So,
so they work great as long as you don't do much with them. They're awesome.
I do my normal stuff. Honestly, it works good.
As long as you're just writing.
Okay. I've been doing my Visual Studio app modernization stuff. That's working great. ClipChamp is just in the cloud, but I do, I do stuff. I'm not, I'm not like just finger painting,
I really want to put some instrumentation on the NPU and say, how often is this thing used? How much, how long, in a given day of work, you use this machine for 10 hours. How many minutes of it had NPU work?
So I guess the number is going to be low now because there just aren't enough of them and there isn't enough software. It's a chicken egg thing, right? This is, whenever multimedia extensions for Intel chips or, math coprocessors for SX chips or trying to think what else, whatever, like in the beginning, I mean, usage is going to be low, but hopefully over time, this thing has the impact and we'll have these sophisticated computers, whatever they are. Yeah. Whatever types. And this is the thing I talked about. This is the orchestration thing. I want the system to be smart enough to say, okay, look, you have this hardware, so we can, we're going to route things accordingly. Yeah, we're going to. You're always going to have the best possible experience. Yeah.
This is the way the DirectX behavior, where if I have that, I do this. If I have that, I do that. The difference here when you think about the NPU model,
abstract it exactly.
Yeah. The nice thing with the NPU's model is you could easily cast that to the cloud as well. It's like, if I have a connection and that's the fastest way to do it, I'll do it that way.
I think that might be the secret sauce of AI in a way that it will take time, but yes, that if your computer peters out, it's not over, right? You can push it up to the cloud and get it done.
Let me reach out to that big NPU in the sky and take care of you.
Yeah, right. I think that's okay. But we're just not there yet. That's all.
Can we talk about the IDC thing? Because I did read the piece, but I was wondering how they came to the conclusions they came to.
So IDC said, what is it? 2%, 6%, I think they said growth.
I just want to remind people, IDC is the company that said that Windows Phone was going to overtake iPhone by 2015 or whatever year. So, just...
It's not an exact science. Is that what you're saying?
Grain of salted or whatever.
Yeah.
Look, they're predictions, but they talk to PC makers, they talk to people in the channel, they have sources. So,
well, my question would have been to all those folks: how many of these are you making? Because let's presume you sell them all, right? I suspect the pipeline's not big enough to actually make a meaningful number of them.
Well, this is the conversation we had around recall, where I said, how many of these things do you think there are going to be? Yeah. If we sell 250 million computers in a year, they start selling these in June. Do you think it's going to be more than 1 or 2%? I mean, really? And if so, what's that number look like? Yeah. It's not a big number, right?
No.
So yeah, even the most generous prediction for these things.
I mean, you'd be crazy to make more than 10 million of these machines in the first iteration.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, really? Especially Gen 1. It's,
like, what are you talking about? You're just going to get stuck with a bunch of bad hardware.
Yeah. Intel and AMD are breathing down your necks, et cetera. Yeah. So the other issue, unfortunately, and this is just more of the industry than anything else, is that we have, I don't know, for in the second or third year in a row now, we're like, no, this is the year we're coming back, baby. And it's like, IDC's like, actually, it looks like it's going to be pretty flat this year overall, And they're starting also to exclude China from predictions because China's dragging down the entire industry even worse.
Well, and also not reporting actual figures. Like, not only are the numbers bad, they're also lies.
Yeah, right. So IDC twice in the past 30 days has come out with some, I'm going to call it data, for lack of a better term, but reports where they discuss, how they kind of see the year going. And right now, they believe the PC market from a unit sales perspective is basically going to be flat with last year, which is not what we were talking about, 6 months or 8 months ago. Consumer PC sales, they say, are going to fall 1.1%.
And business will make up the diff.
Yeah. So some of the things that are happening this year, just to remind people, or not this year, but next year rather, XP, Windows 7 going out of support. Jesus, Paul. Windows 10, I'll hit on the right version eventually.
Pick a number.
Yeah, I know.
Number.
XP 7. No, wait. NT. What am I talking about?
One of these.
Windows 10, the one that's used by almost 1 billion people still.
Oh, yeah.
Is going to exit support. Asterisks, right? You can still pay for it, but it gets super expensive. So, look, we're always trying to rationalize, like, when we change things, is the great turnaround in business going to be delayed because businesses now can pay for support for a couple of years? I don't know, maybe. I always think of the business part of the PC market as being the most reluctant upgrade cycle ever of all time, always, right? I mean, you can make any excuse you want. They don't want to upgrade. And then when they do, they're going to sit on that hardware for 8 years. So, are you going to buy a first gen Snapdragon X and sit on that for 8 years?
Probably not.
Probably not.
Probably not the culture of the people that are buying those machines, and not those machines.
Yep.
And this, all of these specifications that make a Copilot Plus PC are, suspect. They are a marketing term that they're hopefully fitting a product into, and that product is changing.
Yeah, it's unfortunate in a way that these computers got caught up in the Microsoft's AI thing.
Yeah.
But then again, there's so much, it's understandable, right? Because there's so much attention on this.
Well,
right
and
now.
they're so gun shy to failed ARM attempts now. Like, you can't blame them for being squeamish.
Yeah.
They've had their butts handed to them a few times. Like, this is not how you sell a machine. You don't sell a machine off of its processor. You sell a machine off of the thing it can do that you want.
Yeah. I mean, look, like I've said this a million times. I mean, if this thing works, you'll never even know what you're doing. And maybe after the fact, someone will be like, hey, did you know, let me lift you've been drinking Pepsi the whole time. Whatever, like you might be surprised. Like, actually,
he
it's
never
been working
has
fine.
a second cup at home.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, my coffee. So maybe it's like that. I don't know, but I think they're obviously they've chosen to market it on AI. I think most people agree it was kind of a mistake, but I get it. I
didn't even know that it was a mistake, but know what it is. Yeah.
Yeah, it stinks. Yeah.
Well, it'll stink less if it covers more machines. And if it's only new machines, it's always going to stink. Like, the fact that you can now say, hey, you qualify as a Copilot Plus PC if you meet these specs that you could build a machine for.
The thing is, nobody remembers this stuff.
No.
Originally, these were always connected PCs. Remember the first gen Windows 10 on ARM. Leo mentioned Evo. Evo is what came out of the Ultrabook non-spec, but Evo is still a thing, by the way. They still have like Evo, like it keeps getting updated for some reason. Nobody knows. Like, it's a sticker on your laptop. Nobody cares. I think Copilot Plus is going to fall into this category where it's like,
they'll just sweep it away.
Yeah.
That'll be Copilot ready machines. Like, they'll just be another one.
Yep.
I got to stick with this for as long as the agreement exists for that special with Qualcomm that brought us here.
Well, I'm curious, right? Yeah. So eventually, like I said, and we've been talking about Intel, AMD, they're going to hit this TOPS number.
Yep.
Exceed it. Are those going to be Copilot Plus PCs? I thought AI PC was okay as a name. I don't know. I guess there are gaming PCs, and then there are gaming PCs. There are AI PCs. So I don't know. Yeah. Anyway, I don't know that anyone thought that AI PCs or Copilot Plus PCs were going to rejuvenate the market, but we're always looking for that excuse, so maybe. I mean, Apple, they don't say these things publicly, but according to, the people are usually pretty right about this stuff. Apple expects to sell 10 or 12% more iPhones this year because of AI.
Right.
We'll see.
We'll see. They certainly marketed it the best. They don't say when they say AI, they mean Apple intelligence.
That might be a best case scenario.
Talk about hijacking an entire term. Brilliant.
Yep. I love and hate them so much.
Yeah. No, they make these biologists so good.
Oh, so good. If you ever want to feel bad about Apple, if you need that nudge, try to set up a HomePod. You'll hate yourself.
Oh, yeah.
It's beautiful.
There's still horror out there.
Yeah, no, it does just work, but it takes 24 hours. And then the final issue, which has always been an issue with Windows 11 on ARM, is that Microsoft doesn't make ISOs available. We've been talking about this a little bit. They do make them available in certain channels, which is kind of interesting. But you as a consumer could just Google download Windows 10 or download Windows 11, and you'll get a link to a Microsoft page where you can download that ISO. It's very simple. Right. You can't do that for ARM. They have ISOs for the Insider program for ARM, but those always kind of change. And I don't know when it was back in May. I think I had that tip about upgrading to 24H2 using an ISO from the Insider program, but staying in stable. That was never made available to ARM, right? So if you're one of those lucky, I almost said idiots, that's not fair, but those few people who own a previous gen Windows and ARM device, you don't have a path to go to 24H2 through Microsoft like we did do on x64. So a lot of you have probably heard of a site called UUP Dump, and if you haven't, now you have. And they let you search for ISOs of various Windows versions, stable, inside a preview, whatever. And right now, it's odd. They do not have stable ISOs for 24H2 for some reason, even though that is a thing for ARM. But you can get the latest release preview build on ARM, which is the stable version, and you'll be right up to date. I wrote this on the day before Patch Tuesday like an idiot. So the build number at the time was 26,100.1000. Now it's 1,150, but whatever, it doesn't matter because Patch Tuesday happened. We'll talk about it.
Seems to be the most current one at the moment.
Yep. Yeah, so you can get it. I mean, and like I said, I did do this with a previous gen Windows 11 on ARM PC, and it works fine. Like, it's absolutely fine. And you're in stable. You don't not in the Insider program. You'll get the Patch Tuesday updates. You can optionally get the preview updates on week D.
So it's not a wonky version.
I will tell you, if you're not a technical person, I don't know what you're doing to listen to this podcast, but B, it's a little bit of a process to use the tiny UUP dump download to create the ISO, which is what you have to do.
Right.
It's a script you have to run. You can only do it completely in Windows. They actually have scripts for Linux and Mac OS for some reason, but if you actually want to create that ISO at the end, you have to be in Windows to do it in one whack. It takes about 30 minutes. If you're the type of person that likes to read like a Linux text screen when it boots up, you'll love it. It's just like that. Lots of good stuff. So, and it is a script, so you get to see what it's doing. It's not installing malware in your computer and all that kind of stuff, but it is a third-party site. So yeah, your mileage will vary, et cetera. I've always had pretty good luck with it.
Right.
But it's not for the faint of heart, and it's not it's not something I would point my wife at. It's like, I can't run Windows. Go to the UEP dump, honey. You'll be fine. It's not a conversation we're going to be having.
Don't do that.
No.
She'll slap you. She's going to slap you.
Yeah. Oh, she slapped me it would be a lawsuit is what she slapped me with. Yeah.
All right, let's take a break because we have lots more to talk about, and I really want to get to everything. But I also want to say hello to our new sponsor. Talked about him last week, Big ID. If you've got a lot of data, and every business these days has a lot of data, probably in a lot of different places, I don't think anybody has more data in more places than the United States Army. They use Big ID to make sure they know where their data is, classify it accurately at scale, whether it's on-prem or in the cloud or both, for structured, unstructured, semi-structured data, hundreds of data sources. Now, the Army, of course, needs this for a variety of reasons, but one of the things your company might be worried about not only is where that data is, but is AI exfiltrating it accidentally. Data security is very important, right? But now you got to fortify against something a little bigger. All custodians of data, especially modern CISOs, need proactive solutions. With Big ID, BIGID, you can trust that your most valuable asset is secured, your data. As CISOs, your job, for instance, is to ensure that the promise of AI doesn't become a security pitfall. Your company wants to use it, but Big ID's Gen AI solutions help you navigate the labyrinthine world of AI from the CISO perspective. You can leverage solutions with Big ID that take a defense-in-depth approach to automating manual processes, improving accuracy and actionability, and applying AI and ML to cut through the noise. Use it. Improve risk management. Enable a robust data security strategy. And train AI only on data that's safe to use. So many companies in the early days of OpenAI said, "Oh, we're not going to use that. We're just going to." But you can't say no. right? In the long run, you got to let it in, but you want to minimize your attack surface through policy-driven retention management by removing redundant and outdated data. You can audit and inspect what data is being shared with AI, be alerted when usage policies are breached. Who uses Big ID? Well, besides the United States Army, Telenor, a pretty big company. They use Big ID to show their customers they're handling data in a secure way. Here's the quote from Telenor. We want to solve customer problems and regulatory demands. We want to focus on the business and have a partner like Big ID to focus on the tech. We wanted a partner that understood what we're doing and a partner that can help us. Companies who use Big ID are showing they're taking data seriously. That's important for you. It's important for your customers. Big ID has won so many awards. Market leader in data security posture management. That's from the Global InfoSec Awards by Cyber Defense Magazine. In the Cybersecurity Excellence Awards, Best Data Security Company. And a coveted spot in the Citizens Jump Cyber 66 report, the JMP Cyber 66 report, which recognizes Big ID for elevating data management and security with first-of-its-kind AI technology. Now, that's a lot of testimonials I just gave you, but I think this should probably get you thinking. Maybe you should find out more and start protecting your sensitive data wherever your data lives at bigid.com/Windows. Get a free demo. See how Big ID can help your organization reduce data risk, accelerate the adoption of generative AI. You can do both. bigid.com/Windows. Also, there's a free report. They have a lot of really interesting white papers. One of them I'll highlight. A new report that provides valuable insights and key trends on AI adoption, on the challenges those pose, and the overall impact of generative AI across organization. That's one of a bunch of very interesting information that's available to you free when you go to bigid.com/Windows. You owe it to yourself to at least read up. And I think there's a solution here that you're going to want. BIGID, bigid.com/Windows. We welcome them to Windows Weekly. Thank you, Big ID. All right. Should we talk about Windows 11? Have we talked about Windows 11? Let's talk
Windows
about 11. Windows 11.
We have not talked about Windows 11.
Oh, my God. It's Mary Jo Foley. Holy camole. Hello, Mary Jo. This is so great to see you. I almost immediately knew that Paul was in your apartment. And there's the gong.
Here's the gong.
I recognize the
There's
bookshelf.
proof that he's here.
Oh, it's so nice to see you. How is life?
Everything's good.
Yeah?
Except for the heat. Oh, the heat.
I hear it's a little humid in Manhattan right now, a little warm.
Yeah, it's not great. Not great.
We miss you terribly on the show. So,
thanks.
It's really nice to
The
see
new guy sucks. You got to come back.
Get rid of that guy. We want beer, not whiskey. Beer.
Yeah.
Exactly.
What would you
Doesn't
drink
everyone?
today on a hot day in New York City?
Oh, man, I would drink a sour beer, not
sour?
an IPA.
No, I agree with you. Mary Jo,
Right.
we're going to be in New York City, Lisa and I, for a little getaway in September, first week of
nice.
September. And I want to do a meetup, and I hope that we can get you to come to the meetup. I'll give you more information as it comes in. We're going to be out there, I think, maybe September 6th or 7th, or maybe the 8th.
Oh, nice.
So one of those things, right after Labor Day week. Yeah.
Paul's like, go to Rattle and Hum. No, they're closed.
Well, that's
You
what
can't
I was
go
going to
there.
ask you. What's the new Rattle and... I mean, I know there's one, an Uptown one, right? But what's the new Rattle and Hum?
No, everything. They all closed.
They
all
all
the Rattles
closed?
closed. Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Well, where's the new...
We'll have to talk about new spots, the new hot spots.
Okay. I'm up for it. It's great to see you,
All
Mary
right.
Jo. Thank you for stopping by.
Yeah.
And Mary Jo, where can we
I'll give
read
the mic
all of
back.
your great insights? Now, let's give you a plug first.
Oh, nice. Thanks. Okay. Directions on Microsoft.com. If you care about anything in the enterprise, we're your people. If you want to know about Microsoft licensing, we are also your people.
Yes. Awesome. Mary Jo, so great to see
All right.
you. I know Sriracha
guys
will make
too.
an appearance a little later on, a cameo.
He will. He will for sure.
Thank you, Mary Jo.
All right, guys.
Stay cool.
See you later.
She's always cool. Wow, so nice to see Mary Jo Foley. That was a shock. Woo! Popping up there like that. I was not prepared for that. Let's get Paul back in position.
something IPA, something. I don't know.
Something sour. Go have something sour. Is the HP event over, or are you there for? Is it tomorrow?
Sour I can handle. It's actually tomorrow.
It's tomorrow. So Samsung had its event today, but that was in Paris, I think. Yeah, and HP tomorrow. Okay.
Yeah. Samsung said, "You're welcome to come to Paris." I said, "You're welcome to pay for the trip."
And they said, "Well, we'll see you in New York." Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So, okay, Windows 11.
Windows 11, right. So the biggest news in Windows actually we should have Mary Jo talk about this, was that Notepad finally supports spell checking and autocorrect.
So
40 years-ish into its lifespan. I mean, okay. I will say, Microsoft screwed around with Paint in particular in ways that I did not like.
Yeah.
Took a couple of years. It's actually in a really good place right now, although I'd appreciate it if the ribbon was actually a real ribbon and could be collapsed, but whatever, it's okay. They got it in a good place. Notepad, for all the stuff they've added to it, the modern WinApp or WinUI user interface, we'll leave it at that, really. The session state saving, et cetera. I mean, it's never really gotten terrible. Like I use both those apps every single day. Notepad's always been pretty great, which is, of course, is why I'm actively trying to replace it with my own app. But no, it's always been pretty great. So this is just a system capability that's available in Windows. I don't know why this wasn't turned on earlier. I mean, if you have a third-party AI whatever app like Grammarly does this language tool, those work with any app where you can enter text. So you could already have been doing this, I guess, but now it's part of the system. So it's good. So that's not really a game changer. It's just kind of fun to talk about. But so among the many things I've been sort of noticing as I use these Copilot Plus PCs, and in the sense that I consider myself to be the canary in this coal mine being the enshrintification of Windows, especially with regard to OneDrive folder backup being auto-enabled even after I say no. Something I looked this up. I believe it was October 5 or 6 last year when I first reported this. This has been going on for a long time. The whole world seems to have woken up to the fact that this is happening. Welcome, everybody. I've been talking about that for 9 months, but seriously, good for you figuring it out. There's also been some misreporting on what happens during initial setup of a new PC, whether or not it offers you the option to back up your files with OneDrive or not, right? So actually, that's never changed. Well, that's not fair. That hasn't changed in a long time is the right way to say it. If you have Windows 11 Home, doesn't matter if it's on ARM and Intel, AMD, whatever, you don't get the option. It's going to enable that for you. You can turn it off later. If you have Windows 11 Pro, again, architecture doesn't matter. You'll get an option and you can choose to only save files to this PC, which means it will not be enabled. But it's going to keep prompting you because that's part of the terribleness of Windows. And you'll say no, or you won't. I mean, but if you say no, like I do, it will eventually just turn it on. This has been going on for like 9-10 months. Whatever it is. Here's the thing. I've noticed something very interesting. I've noticed two things, and they're related, both OneDrive and folder backup. I stopped using OneDrive because of this behavior last November-ish. Within 30 days of that, I also stopped using Microsoft Word because it also throws up these things because I want to save documents to the desktop by default so I can then put them where I want them. And it keeps warning me, that Word has those yellow notification strips, right?
Off the Office 365 banners.
Yep. And it's not, I should say, right. It's not, this isn't all the Office apps. It's not just Word, but I pretty much just use Word. I just used Word. Really annoying. It's like, I don't know. It's like 17 steps to go through the Word settings to turn.
Yeah.
Here's an idea. I must know what I'm doing. Let me just do it. But no, Microsoft wants to be the nanny state. So, I've been using different things, but for the file stuff, I've been using Google Drive, and that stuff's been great. That thing doesn't bug me at all. The problem is Snapdragon X PCs do not support Google Drive, right? And so, because it's one of those file system things. It's the one app I've tried to use that I can't use. So
It's not like the Google team hasn't paid some attention, because there is a Chrome for ARM, but
right.
different teams,
Yeah,
I guess.
I think I think it's going to change, but for right now, that's the situation. I can live with this, right? So I pay for consumer and business or Microsoft 365. So I have terabytes of storage. I can use OneDrive. It's okay. But I'm also looking to run native apps, and we mentioned that battery life issue. Like, how do you test that? It's very hard, right? And so I thought to myself, I'm going to suck it up. I'm going to use OneDrive. I can do this. I'm going to use Word like a normal person. I can do that. And I've even been using Microsoft Edge a little bit. That's a bridge too far, but I've been doing it. It's a soul-sucking exercise, but whatever.
Could have been Chrome.
And I've noticed something. Chrome. Yeah. I do not enable folder backup.
Right.
But what I've noticed is on 24H2 on Snapdragon X PCs, starting with, I think it was build 26,100.863, I think, the one that was not quite the final or initial build of 24H2,
Yeah.
they had to screw around with it because of recall. It stopped harassing me to use folder backup. And the harassment takes many forms, right? One of the minor ones is when you go to a file explorer window, there's a little, it actually throbs, but up in the address bar area, it says start backup. When you go to one of the folders, it wants you backing up.
Right.
And this is one of those things like, you don't believe your eyes, right? I'm like, wait a minute. I'm looking at it. It has the normal icon for a folder location. It doesn't say start backup. I check. I'm not backing up. It's not harassing me. There's something going on, So I've been using Microsoft Word. Now, it doesn't do this right away, but usually within a day or two, you eventually I'll save a file to the desktop and yellow banner. Come on, idiot. You want to save this thing in a safe place. You got to back it up. Let's go. That has not been happening either. And at first I thought, wow, like, what if this is like unique to Copilot Plus PCs? What if they actually de-insurtified this a little bit just for that audience, But unlike most people, I have actually upgraded a bunch of my computers to 24H2, a lot of x64 computers. So I started updating those to make sure I'm on the latest build. And on all but one of them, which is, the lovely inconsistent behavior we love Windows for so much, that nagging is gone. It's actually gone.
Wow.
Like, this thing I've been complaining about for like 9 months is gone. Not universally, but then again, you think about it, like a lot of this stuff rolls out over time, right? So it's possible. And I thought, I even had the idea, maybe I shouldn't promote this. Maybe I shouldn't talk about it because I don't want Microsoft to see this and say, wait a minute, did we screw something up? Like, do we need to turn it back on?
Where did you do?
Yeah. So I wrote about this. When was this? July 4th. Yeah. So we've only had one patch Tuesday since then, yesterday. Right. So we did get an updated build, and I updated across these computers. I is it going to start again? No, it's not harassing. So I'm not saying it's fixed. I can't claim that. It's too early, but I have this is across probably not 10, about 8 computers, and all but one, it's over. Stopped harassing.
For now.
So maybe. Anyway, but listen, when the other sites start reporting it 9 months from now, it will be real. But for now, just remember, I am that canary. This is my job. Okay, there's that. Mark the date, July 10. Well, it was July 4 when I said it. So anyway, Patch Tuesday happened yesterday, like I said. And and talk about predictability, by the way, it rolled out exactly the way I predicted, which never happens anymore. So 24H2, nothing, just security updates. Did increment the build a little further, but no new features, and a lot of new features for Windows 11, 22, and 23H2. Like I said, they're adding all those 24H2 features to those systems. Yeah. So as of today, again, not universally. Sometimes things roll out a little more slowly, but these 3 Windows versions have aligned like planets. On one of those special astrological days.
Nice.
And we're all, they're all.
As the prophecy decreed, a great conjunction.
Yeah. You got to understand. Richard, ever since he started on the show, it has not been like this.
No,
So
it's been a running joke the whole time.
And in the sense that I could be highly critical or negative of things when they're bad, I just want to point out, I noticed it when it was good. And I appreciate it. So
I mean, it's still weird that they're all the same, right? Like,
I know. Yep.
These are supposed to be different. That's why they have different numbers.
This to me is the most low tech version of, we're going to let people do what they want, but we're also going to do what we want. Right. So you've got this audience that's like, I don't want to upgrade to the new version. They're going to say, you don't have to.
You don't have.
But we are going to add all those features. And now we're going to get
the version you're using.
And if you think about it, yeah, that's what they did with Copilot, the original Copilot, before 23H2 shipped last October. That was supposed to be 23H2. And then in late September in a preview, and then October, I think in final, or however that rolled out. It was a stupid rollout. But however it worked, they were like, yeah, everyone's getting it.
Yep.
It's like we don't want to make, because we know if we made it optional, a release, an update that people could skip, but especially companies, they would. So we're just going to give it to you. So everyone gets what they want, sort of.
Sort of.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Sort of. Yeah.
It's all well and fine till something breaks.
Yeah. Well, no, everything breaks. That's the point of Windows, isn't it? We did not get any insider preview builds last week. Microsoft at one point tweeted, maybe don't expect anything this week for some reason. We didn't know why, and we still don't, but whatever. As of today, unless something has changed since the show started, they have only released a new Canary build. Nothing important. I think most people understand that Microsoft is now putting weather, finance, traffic, and sports tiles on the lock screen for some reason. They do not give you the ability to choose which of those appear. You can just turn them all off or all on, right? So in the Canary build, they've improved that. Not to do that thing I just said. No, that's ridiculous. But rather to configure other options related to whether they're blurred or the size and spacing and fonts and blah, blah. It's stuff nobody cares about. There's some small energy recommendation changes. I don't know if anyone follows this, but if you go into the settings app and go to system, power, and battery, you'll see an energy recommendations area. You can click you go through a series of steps. It will make recommendations. And if you turn them all on, your computer will be very efficient and will also be unusable. But that's your choice, I guess. Let me see what mine says on this one. I never, it's pointless to even bother trying this, but let me just see what this one says. I'm sure I get a horrible grade. Energy recommended. Yeah, 5 of 10. Yeah, it's typical for me, batting about 500. So, I put your device to sleep after 3 minutes. Turn off your screen after 3 minutes. That's something I always customize to be a longer time frame. In fact, I did it literally on this computer here at Mary Jo's house because I got up, got a glass of water, came back, and the computer was off, and I was like, what? Too aggressive. There's if you have presence sensing sensors, which is kind of a neat feature. You can have your PC go to sleep when you walk away from it. That kind of stuff. So you can go through a little checklist. They're starting to add energy saver recommendations related to HDR in the Canary build, and that's it. That's literally between widgets and HDR energy recommendations. That's what we're testing these days in Windows, which is why I installed all the Apple betas, so I have something to do. Yeah, nothing going on. Basically.
I think the energy thing is kind of interesting.
It's interesting, but it's one of those things like you want to do the right thing.
Yeah.
And then you do the right thing and you hate it. And then you say, I'm going to do the wrong thing, which is what we all did when we flew with COVID. So, eventually we're all just selfish and, everything goes to hell in a handbasket.
Knowledge is power.
Everybody.
It's good to know anyway that you're being a jerk. Yeah.
It's important. Yeah. Self-awareness is key to this.
Yes.
This is not a news story, but I'm so proud and embarrassed, I guess, of this. So I have this book, the Windows 11 Field Guide. It's about 1,150 pages long. It's humongous. Like the PDF version is like 377 megabytes.
It is the Ben-Hur of Windows book.
Yeah. But the other books are pretty big too. I mean, relatively speaking. So Windows Everywhere and even the Windows 10 Field Guide, which is only about 500 pages long, they're big for what they are. And the EPUBs are just about as big. And this is a problem because if you have a Kindle like a normal person and you want to read this thing on it, you can't because it's too big for Send to Kindle. Send to Kindle, I think, maxes out now at 200 megabytes. It used to be 50 or 60, but now it's 200. So people will write me and say, hey, I bought your book. Thanks. It's great, I think, but I can't read it on my Kindle. How do I get it on the Kindle? And my knee-jerk reaction to that is, well, that's why I pay LeadPub, because they have a customer service department and they have explanations for how this works. Instead of doing that, I said, you know what? I get enough questions about this. I'm actually going to look at this. And I went through LeanPub's instructions, which are out of date and incorrect. So the perfect combination of things. And what I discovered is that it's next to impossible, depending on how you want to read the book, to get it on a mobile device of any kind.
Really?
Right? So
you can't get an EPUB version or a Mobi version of it?
So if you, let's say you have, I'll just make something up. I can't remember the exact matrix of options I tried, but so you have an Android phone and you download either version, doesn't matter. And it's in the Files app or whatever on the file system. And you long press and say share or open with or open in or whatever the word is. And you choose some app, Kindle, anything else. It just says, no, it's too big.
Oh, wow. The size.
The only
I get it.
Yeah, the only exception I found to it was on, if you have an Apple device, you could have opened it in iBooks or the Books app, whatever the Apple Books app is called. For some reason, that worked fine. So I said, okay, screw this. I got to fix this problem. I spent the better part of February actually making images smaller and doing things to make it whatever. But this time I brought out the big guns and I did first I did it in measured steps that I backed up first, but I tried how low could I go on image compression? Because there are several hundred images, maybe more than 1,000 in the book, whatever it is. And I got it down to 50%, which was meaningful, in my file system. So I thought maybe, and I was doing test runs of it and it looked like I was getting good results. But in the end, you cannot tell the difference looking at the images in the book, EPUB or PDF. And it went from 377 megabytes down to 107 megabytes.
Wow.
The EPUB went down even further. That went from 344 down to 86.
Oh, wow.
So I was like, oh God. So apologies, everyone who bought this book and couldn't get it on their device. It will work now. It will work no problem. In fact, this is nice in every way, shape, and form, because even if you just have to download it and want to open it in a browser, it's so much faster. The performance is just, because it's so small. I've also made the same changes to Windows Everywhere and to the Windows 10 Field Guide and to the Windows 10 Field Guide version that's part of the Windows 11 Field Guide. So wherever you got these books or whatever books you might have, re-download them because they are dramatically smaller today. And I am so sorry it took this long. I don't know what to tell you. So now that I know the secret or whatever, and I've tried to do this in the past, it always kind of failed. I used a different application to do the compression, and
they're JPEGs?
It worked. They're just JPEGs.
I wonder if PNGs
They're screenshots, right?
Would be smaller. Well, it doesn't matter. You figured it out a way now. Yeah.
So that the main result of compression is the reduction in size is because the images got small.
The images are smaller, yes. If smaller on disk, lower quality allegedly. Although, like I said, when you look at it in the book and you zoom in,
you can't tell. That's what you hear about.
Maybe if you zoom in 300%, you might see a couple of artifacts.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah,
really,
this kerning makes me sad. Okay.
It's not bad at all.
PDFs are notoriously huge, but I'm glad to see the EPUB got down by so much.
EPUB shrunk a lot.
The EPUB was even better. I in every case, by the way. Yeah, really good. So I spent a good chunk of, Friday, Saturday, whatever it was on this, and I was so happy to get this done. So
yeah, no, it's great. Great step up.
Yeah. Yep.
Good job.
Now you can add another 1,000 pages and people can still read it.
Well, okay, so let me throw a theoretical at you. So obviously the page count doesn't change. I didn't do anything to the presentation of those images. But one of the things I had done in the past, starting with the Windows 10 Field Guide, was instead of having a full screen image that is to the full width of the page, they're actually 70% of the page. Now I could put them out to 100%. This will make the book longer, right? Because the images will actually be bigger and the text will stretch out. So it'll probably be by hundreds of pages. And the file size will go up, but probably not above 200. So I could still get in under that limit.
Right.
Should I do that? And right now I'm thinking I'm not going to bother, but I could do that one in a batch sense. That one I could batch because Visual Studio, you can make changes across all the files in a folder. I could do that very quickly, but I don't know. I think, you know what? I'm going to take this win. I think, and we're just going to go forward.
Just, you got the big one. You got more people able to read, you know?
Yep.
Good job.
Yeah,
Good job.
Check
mark. Good job. But also 2 years ago would have been nice.
Yeah.
So yeah, sorry. I'm sorry. There you go.
Okay.
Done and done.
Beautiful.
Do you want me to?
Do you want to go on or do you want to stop?
I can do it, Leo. You know what?
Why don't you stop? Just stop.
Give the break.
Just
Give the break.
All right, fine. I'll do that.
Now would be a good time to take a break, and we will come back with more Windows Weekly just around the corner. Surface and AI. But first, a word from our sponsor. We've been talking. Oh, by the way, did you notice our new homage?
That's really great.
You snuck her in last ad.
Show me.
See.
Oh, nice. The Joe B photo. That's a Joe Belfiore photo.
Underneath the Mary Jo Foley, there's a Joe Belfiore. Yeah. But they fit nicely. The hairdos are
slides right in there.
Yeah, slides right in there.
I mix them up sometimes. I actually might be at Joe B's apartment right now. It's hard to say.
Who knows? Yeah.
Let's stop it.
How are the fonts? The fonts should be excellent.
They're perfect.
Yes, the typefaces are untouchable.
Our show today brought to you by 1Password. We know these guys, of course, as a password company, but here's an interesting thing that happened. We've been doing ads for Kolide, Kolide, for a long time. It's a great company that does the second half of user authentication. You know, in a perfect world, end users would, only come into your network on managed devices with IT-approved apps. They'd keep their junky stuff at home. They wouldn't come into the office with their own phones and their own laptops. They wouldn't log into your network's VPN and all that. Unfortunately, it's not a perfect world. Every day, employees use personal devices, unapproved apps, things that aren't protected by MDM or IAM or frankly, or any other security tool. There is a big gap between the security tools we have and the ways we actually work. And you know this if you're in IT or if you're a CISO, or if you're protecting a network, you know this. 1Password calls it the access trust gap. They've also created the first ever solution to fill it by teaming up with Kolide. 1Password, they call it their extended access management. It secures every sign-in for every app on every device. Of course, it starts with the password manager you know and love, 1Password, combined with the device trust solution that we've talked about so much that they just acquired, Kolide. So now your users are authenticated and their apps, their devices are authenticated. 1Password Extended Access Management cares about the user experience and privacy. And that's what's cool about this solution. It protects you, but it still gives the users the experience they want and the privacy they need. It also means 1Password Extended Access Management can go places other tools can't, like personal devices, contractor devices. It ensures that every device is known and healthy, and every login is protected. So stop trying to ban BYOD or shadow IT. The good news is it isn't hopeless. You can start protecting them with 1Password's Extended Access Management, and users love it. Check it out at onepassword.com/Windows Weekly, the number 1 password.com/Windows Weekly. I think you'll be very, very impressed. I know you will. All right, now let's get back to the show.
Mm-hmm.
And what is up? What is next on the agenda? I'm just checking here. I'm just looking.
Surface updates.
Surface.
Yeah, we need the good. What's the right word for that?
Surfaces.
What's the plural?
The plural of surface.
Just
surface.
Surfaces. It's just a lot of surfaces. It's a lot of sisses. Surfaces.
I do feel like Sisyphus. That makes sense.
Sisyphus with your surfaces.
So I'm trying to find the main site. Where is this thing? So here we go. Surface Laptop. So Microsoft maintains a website with like firmware update, history for their Surface devices, as you would expect. Since the Surface Laptop first shipped, there have been 2 firmware updates now.
And this is since
the first
June,
one,
right? Like it's 3 weeks, 4 weeks.
Yep. So there were 2 firmware updates exactly. Yeah, it's a new device. It's
new device, new hardware.
Yeah, I mean this made the day one experience kind of interesting because, you know, you have to reboot to install this massive, you know, it's just a version update, really. It was, even though it was the same basic thing, but the version of Windows without recall was apparently required 8 gigabytes or whatever. And while it's offline rebooting, it's like, oh, we'll install this firmware update now too if you didn't want to use your computer this week. So you kind of went through that. And then on July 2nd, they delivered a second one.
Oh, wow.
Guys, seriously. But I did not experience any of these issues. There was a similar, literally identical, I guess, firmware update same day for Surface Pro 11. Same issues, you know, fixing the same issues. I've never noticed any of these. So I'm not sure what to say. Although, by the way, one of them was momentary color distortion.
Color distortion, yeah.
Horizontal white line flicker during initial device setup. Did not see that. Customize accessibility settings for mouse would reset after reboot. I actually used the accessibility settings on only the Surface Laptop 7 to adjust the mouse cursor size because for some reason in Word, which again had not been using since last November, was like literally 1 pixel thin,
tiny,
and you could that little I-beam cursor, you know, for the insertion point. I couldn't see it. I'm like wiggling the I'm like, where the frick is this? Like, what is going on? And so I've used that, but I didn't notice it not retaining that. So that's kind of cool. Audio playback, audio jittering, yada yada. So I've had a pretty error-free experience. I don't know. But anyway, you're going to want to keep up with that stuff. For some reason, Microsoft recommends that you run the Surface app to get these updates. But then when you click on it, it just loads Windows Update. So here's a little pro tip. Just go to Windows Update. That's where you're going to get it, you know. And is this true? Yeah. So actually, one of the other ways in which the other two Snapdragon X computers are the same as the firmware updates, the driver updates, all that stuff go through Windows Update, not through Lenovo Vantage, which is typically how you get that stuff on Lenovo devices, and not through HP Support Assistant, which is how you would get them on an HP device, usually. Not always, but usually. So yeah, that stuff is also consistently in Windows Update, which is whatever. Okay. Till about 10 seconds ago, this AI section was going to be pretty damn weak, but actually something really interesting happened. So, you remember last week that Apple, after paying OpenAI, I want to say $0 billion, got a non-voting seat or on their board, an observer seat, I think they were calling it. Which is exactly what Microsoft got after they gave them $13 billion.
Right.
So
I'm sure OpenAI is sending billions of dollars to Apple.
Yeah. There is a feeling that Microsoft is not happy about that. You know, I don't think you need too much of an imagination to think that might be true.
Yeah.
And then this morning we got up and OpenAI has dropped both Microsoft and Apple from their board seats to apparently, I mean, according to reports, this is for regulatory reasons.
Yeah,
right?
I saw this and I really wanted to know what you guys thought of this because I don't. There's something going on, right?
Well, here's what I can tell you, and this is just a fact because we just talked about this. The EU, the UK CMA, and I want to say the FTC, but if not the DOJ, but the US government for sure, have all in the past announced investigations of this relationship because the feeling is they have a non-standard partnership so they can avoid Microsoft acquiring OpenAI, which would open them up to an antitrust investigation. And I think we all agree, probably not going to get approved, right? So there's this general feeling out in the world that they're doing something sly here to avoid that regulatory scrutiny. So all three of these I would say the three most important regulatory bodies in the world all said, nope, we're going to investigate it anyway. And last week, the EU said, yeah, it doesn't break the law. It's fine.
Wow.
Which is kind of interesting, right? So now they're still, remember, they shifted their investigation. They're still looking at it, but from another angle, an anti-competitive, I described it as the EU version of the Sherman Antitrust Act investigation, right? It's an anti-competitive investigation. It's a different thing because, you know, they can never stop investigating. But okay, regulatory reasons, I guess, but you were just cleared by the EU. So what's going on?
What is this really about?
You know what? I honestly, in a weird way, it might be tied to this competition issue the EU raised, which we all sort of, well, not we all, but some people have kind of poo-pooed. There's a feeling in the United States that like the EU will go after any company as long as it's American. But honestly, that's not really fair, right? I mean, they go after these giant big tech companies.
They go after giant tech companies. The fact that they happen to be American is, well.
I mean, USA, but they're American. So
the question mark is when you look at a Sony or Nintendo, right? The exceptions in the case that often aren't scrutinized.
Yep. By the way, the other, I'm not gonna, I don't want to go too deep in this, but I do get a little irritated with people and comments and stuff on my site. I can tell you one thing no American has even looked at even for 1 second is what else is the EU investigating? If you actually looked, a lot.
It's a lot.
So we hear about the big tech stuff and we get all, upset about it. But the truth is these guys go after a lot of companies. A lot of them are in the EU.
Yeah.
They stop a lot of mergers. It's not just us. So
the Siemens, the Maersks, the Mercedes-Benz, big companies.
They're all over there.
Yeah.
Yep. And a lot of them are what? European. So just throwing that out there, just a little balance. But tied to this anti-competitive notion is this almost like you almost get this collusion kind of vibe off of this, don't you? Like Apple and Microsoft are competitors in some ways, but they're also partners in some ways, right? Microsoft and OpenAI also technically partners and competitors in some ways, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of hard to prove this kind of thing unless someone's like stupidly sent a drunken text message at 3:00 in the morning. But like the notion that these companies and maybe others have been like, look, we're all doing pretty good. We're all in the top 5, biggest companies in the world, whatever it is. Why don't we keep it that way? Collusion is a tough thing to prove, but I wonder if it isn't related to that. You'll notice a company no one's ever heard of does not have a non-voting person on OpenAI's board. It's Apple and Microsoft, literally the 2 biggest companies in the world.
But the Microsoft one came out of the Sam Altman firing, right? That was a mistake on Satch's part, but only because the board was having in-camera meetings, right? And as opposed to a general meeting or a public meeting, they did in-camera meetings, and that's the one thing an observer can do when not actually holding a fiduciary responsibility to the board is that they can be in an in-camera meeting.
Yep. So Microsoft's official stance on this is like, look, obviously in the wake of what happened with Sam Altman getting fired, then coming back, we had some concerns, and we wanted to be there to make sure, whatever. And their public stance is, look, we've been doing this now for 6-9 months. We feel like everything's in a good place. They are better run now. They have a better board or a more amenable board, however you want to say it, than they did late last year. In our opinion, everything's okay. There's absolutely no way everything's okay from Microsoft's perspective, to be clear, because Apple's there. I just want to be super clear about this, but that's their stance. So all we can do is speculate. It's fun.
I think you hit on the big one. You put $13 billion in, and you got an observer seat. Apple's put nothing in, and they're going to get an observer seat. That devalues the seat, so nobody should have a seat. Make it go away. But I think the bigger one is we're hearing about a restructuring of OpenAI as a whole. Let's give up on the not-for-profit thing and mimic the other thing that's interesting is for a privately held company, they're publishing revenue numbers.
Yeah.
Right. When they're talking 3.4 billion so far this year.
Yep. They're going to be okay.
Well, also the point is, why do you publish that number when you don't, public companies are required to? You're not a public company. Why are you doing this? You're positioning yourself.
Yep. This is kind of a weird comparison maybe, but the corporate structure of OpenAI is actually very similar to that of Raspberry Pi Foundation, where it's a nonprofit, but there's a for-profit arm, and Raspberry Pi just went public, by the way, the for-profit part of it, I think, or maybe the whole thing. But OpenAI is probably going to be a little bigger than Raspberry Pi.
Just a little bit,
just a little bit bigger.
Itty bitty.
But there are some parallels there. It's kind of interesting. I do think we want to save the world vibe that they were trying to throw off originally.
Susquehanna is gone, right? The argument for OpenAI and this entire structure was to pull those best and brightest minds out of Google Brain back in the day and put them out in the public. Well, all those folks have now left OpenAI to go off and start their own AI startups to make their $1 billion, because they're not going to make it at OpenAI.
Because they're not. That's right. And maybe
and that might even be the pressure to restructure OpenAI. We're not going to be able to retain the talent unless they get to share in this. We need a structure that allows for options and MA and share allocations to our principal employees.
Yep. And it's probably not coincidental that this new structure will much more closely resemble the thing Sam Altman has frankly kind of wanted all along, right? Which is, he's not really been as on board with that whole save the world, stuff. So, there you go.
Well, it turns the other side of this is, since GPT-2, they weren't releasing the source code anyway because it was considered too dangerous. Because if you just put that code out there where anybody could run it, you can do really nefarious things. The cloud as the gatekeeper for these tools has actually served in a pseudo-regulatory position, right? That it's what's, the folks in Wisconsin that stood up a machine learning model to run for a seat in government. They were able to say, nope, that's being turned off, right? If it was running independently, you couldn't do that.
Right. Yeah, I will say the one thing that is consistent about OpenAI is that I don't think we're ever really going to understand what this company's doing. But
why would you presume that they know? I'm
sorry, I didn't mean to suggest that. I'm just saying, they just remain a mystery. They're very.
OpenAI was formed by a group of tech billionaires that were not happy with what Google was doing. Then they lied, underfunded it, left it stranded. It was never supposed to succeed. They just everything got screwed up when it worked. There's the problem. As long as they were limping along as an AI project that doesn't do anything, none of this would change. Once the billions show up, it's problematic.
This is like the Eddie Murphy joke about everybody getting drunk on election night and voting for Jesse Jackson, and they wake up in the morning and he won. And it's like it works. They were like, wait, what are you talking? We've been babbling nonsense for 10 years. What do you mean it works?
Yeah.
I maybe it was a surprise to everybody. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy.
I think it was absolutely.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that's because you would have had a better plan if it wasn't.
Right. Right. There you go. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. And ultimately, this is like a Twilight Zone episode where the little kid has magic powers, like nobody could defy him and he doesn't make any sense, but Now, if you think for a moment that any of this LLM stuff was a grand strategy, it's just not the case, right? This is the amount of duck paddling going on underneath those ducks makes it very clear they're just making this up as they go, as fast as they can. Right. Well, that's the story of Silicon Valley.
Yeah, totally.
When you think about it, I mean, writ large.
Yeah.
AI is just fascinating because it happens so quick. That's the thing. It's not happening in slow motion like a lot of stuff.
No, you sign up 100 million users in 2 months and people take notice and a lot of money appears because you're going to make it into a lot more money.
I mean, pretty soon, some companies making computers based around this stuff and nobody knows what the heck happened.
No, that's, it's Silicon Valley is navigation systems for nuclear missiles get turned into RAM and then somebody comes up with a CPU. I mean, that's the chain, right?
Yeah. But self-driving cars work, so that's fine.
Okay.
Oof. Yikes.
Talk to me about Opera. I'm trying to care about Opera.
It's kind of a light week on AI news, I guess.
Yeah.
But so Opera has been very aggressive adding AI capabilities to its browser. They announced a new infrastructure for the next major release of their Opera One kind of flagship browser. Since, I don't know, February-ish, they've been doing what I think they just call AI feature drops through their developer channel where they're testing AI features in the browser, and then they push them out to public, stable rather, at a later time. So on the side, though, they have this other browser called Opera GX. This is a gaming web browser. I'm not sure I 100% understand what the point of a gaming web browser is, but as is the case with, or will soon be the case, I guess, with Opera One, they have been adding AI features to Opera GX that have come out of that AI feature drop program they have. And so as of fairly recently, improvements to the image generation capabilities, which they use Google Imagen 2 for, image understanding, which is where you can kind of show it an image and then it will say, this is what that thing is. Like, this is that model of shoe or whatever, or this is how math problems get solved because they're visual. It has some basic programming capabilities in there as well. I should ask it about my WPF thing, actually.
Nice.
Yeah, that kind of stuff. It's using a lot of Google tech, frankly. Google WaveNet model for text-to-speech capabilities. So if you want to get your answers from the AI, which is called ARIA in that case, read to you instead of text, and you can do it that way.
Is this a perfect microcosm of the AI hype train right here? This is not features that the customers were asking for. This is, hey, we're the 6-string browser. How do we move up a couple of notches? I know. Yeah. Let's be first in this AI movement. Maybe we'll get new downloads from it.
The thing I learned here is that Opera has a gaming browser. I didn't even.
There you go.
What is that?
Yeah. Okay.
What is that?
You guys are so cynical. So yes.
No ordinary browser. Goodness, no.
Gaming? I don't get it.
It is for gaming, but I'll say this:
are you gaming on regular
or are
browsers?
you browsing? I don't understand.
I don't understand why I can't do both. Why you limit people like that? No, I don't know. Well, some people play games in browsers, I guess. I mean, that would be part of it. But I mean, Edge has a gaming.
So it's optimized for streaming games over the internet?
Yeah.
Oh, does it work well?
Don't get crazy now, Mr. Laporte. Honestly.
Now, here's the next question.
I've actually used Opera One.
Why the hell would I want AI while I'm gaming in my browser?
Well, because it's still a browser. I mean, like, even if you have a muscle car, you still want a radio. So I do. Again, we've been not. I don't mean we, the three of us, although I think we all individually have done this, and I think a lot of us listening to this or whatever, we all think about this. We're trying to figure out AI, right? Like, what is this thing? And I think one of the things we've kind of come to is that AI in the end is just a series of features that will improve the things we use, whatever they might be, right? And so adding AI capabilities of whatever form to Word or Excel or Edge or Opera, whatever, like, okay, fine. And some of these things will make sense, some won't. But the stuff that, when you think about what people browse for, and because we've all done this, right? Every once in a while, I actually do need what is actually called a reverse image search. And I have to Google what that is every time because I can never remember how to do it. But we do that thing. And you come across like some article I write and you're like, listen, I don't have all afternoon. I want to know, let's cut to the chase. This thing is 4,500 words.
Right.
And it can summarize it and do that kind of stuff. I mean, I think these will just be features of browsers, right? And so to keep reiterating some of the things I keep saying, and, at some point, if everything is AI, nothing is AI.
Yeah, which that's
if
clearly
everyone
where we
has AI, if you can, like, if you prefer Opera or whatever the product is, or like OpenOffice or something, and the AI in those products meets your needs, just like maybe those products do generally for word processing or web browsing, whatever. I mean, you'll just use that.
This is not why Opera did this. This is Opera trying to get market share.
Yeah, no, I'm not.
They're not. You didn't add these features to protect your existing market share. Oh, customers are leaving Opera in droves because Bing AI.
Yeah, so I would say of the browsers we've heard of, right? Opera has. Let me just think about that before I say this. So far, I would say Opera has been the most aggressive, adding AI capabilities to their browser. There's something to be said for Brave's approach as well. They're doing something interesting because they have a search engine and they do these other things. And, they're both doing what I would call like an agnostic AI approach that will allow you to plug in your own local SMLs at one point, or SLM, sorry, or hook into cloud-based LLMs, including those you might pay for, like OpenAI, ChatGPT Plus or whatever. And so, yeah, I mean, I think this is their attempt to be like, let's outdo the slower moving traditional guys. And maybe we'll pick up some of these.
Like we got to do something. I think Opera's market share is still behind like the default Samsung browsers. So I don't know that it matters all that much. But again,
yes,
you don't have to move very far to move up. And poor old Brave,
Yeah,
I don't even think it's even on the chart.
To be fair to Opera, they actually have long had kind of an innovative, unique approach to web browsing, which, depending on, it's just like Arc. Like for a lot of people, Arc, you see Arc and you're like, oh my God, this is exactly, yes, I need this. And some people like what, I don't understand this. Opera kind of suffers from that a little bit. And, Opera, like Arc, actually, sees the world from a very web-centric viewpoint. And it's like, look, if you could just do everything in the browser, why would you even have other applications?
Yeah.
And for, because it's Chromium and it just works, you get all the benefits of that ecosystem with the extensions and compatibility, performance, et cetera. So, what they do on top of it either speaks to you or it doesn't. But like you said, yes, it's a low usage share product, but the people that use Opera are like, yeah, no, I wouldn't even consider using something else. Like, this thing's awesome.
Well, what else would I use?
Yeah. Well, yeah. You do.
Well,
God, it makes you miss Internet Explorer, doesn't it? No, it doesn't.
Let's not get crazy. The bad old days. This podcast works best on Netscape Navigator.
There you go.
this show is Windows Weekly, and it's featuring Paul Thurrott and Richard Campbell. And we are going to get to the Xbox segment, the moment you've all been waiting for. Should I get Mary Jo Foley far away for this next portion of the show?
It's unlikely she will come in here and hit me with a pillow or something. Is that what you're worried about?
The cat might attack. That's about it.
Yeah, the cat has been very...
I don't know. This looks like the right size Xbox segment for MJ's taste.
You know, she'd love this.
That's true.
It's only two lines. It's
There
that.
you go.
It's that small. Paul, take it away.
Well, now that you mention it. So all year, I've been asking this question. When
Blizzard
is Activision Blizzard going to come to this Xbox Game Pass Ultimate thing that I've been paying $16 a month for? Microsoft has answered this question with, how would you like a price hike, buddy? How about shutting the hell up? And it's like, wait, what? So starting in, I think it's September, October, somewhere, they're going to raise the price of Xbox Game Pass Ultimate to $19.99 a month from $16.99. PC Game Pass is going up by $2. And then Game Pass Core, which is what used to be Xbox Live Gold, right, is also going up a bit. Well, actually,
I was looking down the price list looking for
50%.
where is the Blizzard add-on for an additional $30 a month?
Yeah. So, yikes. Here's some interesting bits here. They're adding a new tier called Xbox Game Pass Standard. This is going to launch in the coming months, and the big difference between it and the PC and Ultimate tiers is that it will not give you access to day one releases of software. Right. So aside from my concern about Game Pass, the number one question I think most people have had with Activision Blizzard and Microsoft is, well, okay, but a new Call of Duty game is coming out, and this is usually like $1 billion within hours of them releasing it every year. But if you put this thing out on Game Pass day and date, you're not going to make $1 billion.
Nope.
How are you going to make it up? And the way they're going to make it up is they're going to raise the price, and then they're going to have this other tier where you just don't get that thing, right? You'll get those games later.
Yeah, maybe a year.
Yeah. I mean, okay, that's interesting. The other change is that, and this is the weird one. The thing that most people think of Xbox Game Pass, which is technically called Xbox Game Pass for console, right? Because it's for the Xbox consoles, is going away. This thing is currently there alongside PC Game Pass, right? So you had one for PC, one for console, and then you had the one that was both, Ultimate, which also added the cloud streaming, formerly Project xCloud. So they're actually they're going away from the console version of this. And yikes. That to me is concerning. And so one of the weirdism, this is not unique to Xbox, frankly, but as an Xbox guy, forever, when they started Xbox Live Gold, I should say Xbox Live, because remember there were two versions in the beginning. It was Silver and Gold, right? Silver was the free version, but Gold had, whatever perks, but the big one for me was multiplayer gaming, right?
Yep.
At the time, if you were a PC gamer, you would have laughed at this because every game has like multiplayer. Like if you were playing Quake or whatever back in the day, you just got multiplayer. You don't pay for that. But, Microsoft's offering this consistent experience. They're offering capabilities like matchmaking capabilities where you can play against people of roughly your skill level in any given game, et cetera, et cetera. They had built up this thing through Halo, frankly. And okay, so you pay like whatever it was at the time, $5 or $6. I think it was, $45, $60 a year, whatever, at the beginning for Xbox Live Gold, so you could play multiplayer,
Mhm.
But that's gone too, right? So they have this thing called Xbox Game Pass Core, which is now it's $75 a year, or will
And
be.
this is
that
the
was
old
formerly
gold,
$60.
right?
This is the old gold.
Yeah.
So that will still be around. That means you'll be able to, multiplayer, I guess, on console. But if you're a console gamer on Xbox and you want the subscription, the cheapest price is going to be this Xbox game. Sorry, I'm trying to use this trackpad. Will be called Xbox Game Pass Standard. But you don't get the games day and date.
Right.
Now, if I understand this correctly, I shouldn't just assume this, but
They
this
don't
has to
say
be-
when you will, just that you won't.
well, they also don't. Well, I'm trying to read this to make sure I'm getting this right.
Mhm.
There was a much bigger library of games on console than there is on PC if in
Mhm.
Xbox Game Pass,
Yep.
right? Just straight up. The PC collection is actually pretty good. And by the way, Activision Blizzard should be freaking fantastic. But right now, I just say it's pretty good. It's pretty good. Say at least 100 something, whatever. It's pretty good. But the version that's on console is way bigger. Like I think 3 times as big, if I'm not mistaken. I don't understand what's happening. Like I don't understand getting rid of what I think of as the core, even that's not the right name, but game, even though there is one called Core that I don't think of as Core, the console version of the subscription is going away.
Right.
Yikes. And by the way, what's the date? Starting today, you will not be able to sign up for this as a new member.
Oh, it's a good thing.
Starting right now.
Good. Oh,
Yep.
too
So
late.
So
my
what
tip is
will new
don't
members
sign up
get?
for that today. It's no longer available.
Right.
Shoot, and I just learned about it today.
Yeah. So I have to make some assumptions here. I should look it up. I shouldn't actually. It's going to really make me upset. But if I go to like account.microsoft.com and I will find that I have a couple of subscriptions that are kind of pushed out for a while. I assume, and again, this gets you into trouble, but because my Xbox Game Pass Ultimate, I keep wanting to call it a subscription is pushed out to whenever it is. Despite the price hike, I assume I will just keep getting it, right? And that whenever my renewal date comes up in the future, which could be a year and a half away, then I will start having to think about paying the higher price or walking away, I guess. Yeah, so mine is good through December 5, 2025.
So I've gone to the site now looking from a Canada
Yeah.
perspective, and the PC only one says you do get new games on day one, but you don't get multiplayer. And the console only one says you get online multiplayer, but you don't get games.
You don't get day one. Yeah.
Right.
So they've totally figured. Well, what are they channeling you toward, right?
Yeah.
Xbox
Ultimate.
Game Pass Ultimate or
You should get
standard,
Ultimate
I guess.
always.
Yeah. So $20 a month. Now, $20 a month for what they're currently offering is a little bit high.
Mhm.
But when you factor in Activision Blizzard, I think you could make this case. In fact, this is the argument or
Yeah,
discussion.
so
we
why
might have
do
had.
this before you start putting Activision Blizzard in? Like,
Yep.
there was an easy opportunity to do this. Like, renew to this new policy, and hey, here's Fallout.
Yep. I cannot answer. I am so confused by this. I do not. So Xbox Game Pass Standard, like you said, includes online console multiplayer.
Yes, but not
So that means it
day
includes
one.
console period as well. So you get the console collection, but not the day one stuff. Okay.
Right.
When do those come? Or do they ever? I mean, they must someday,
come
right?
eventually.
I mean, they must come eventually.
It could be day two,
just said-
but I suspect it's not.
Well, here's your answer because this is very clear. At a future date. So
a future day.
yikes. I don't know what to make of this. This to me was pretty clear cut before the value proposition was whatever. You either looked at it and said, yep, or you're like, nope, but whatever. It was very clear.
But we are announcing this in the summertime when people are on holidays.
Yeah, I know. So if you're a current subscriber, you're well, you might be paying month to month. I don't know. At some point you're gonna bump into a problem.
Yeah.
If you paid out for a year, you're in good shape for a little while, but you're going to have some decisions to make. And I don't understand announcing this and not saying, oh, and by the way,
there was such an easy sweetener.
Blizzard.
Yeah.
Yep.
Such an easy sweetener just laying there.
It is completely understandable that the price would go up to include that stuff. We would have talked about this last year, yes. Like how could this not happen? Mm-hmm. But yeah, here we are. So I don't know what to make.
Maybe they don't want to make, Lena Paul.
I can tell you, Xbox could use a little bit less bad news, What's
and the fear is there's going to be a Blizzard add-on.
Lena Khan.
Hey, would you like the Blizzard games? It's an extra $20 a month.
Maybe they don't want Lena Khan to get upset. You think there's a...
Lena Khan is apparently the most easily defeated regulator in the history of regulators. But the person you don't want to get upset is the, Marguerite Vestager or whatever.
Yeah.
From the EU, right? Because that woman's not messing around. So I don't know. This is, like I said, very confusing to me. This just happened today. They haven't actually had a formal announcement. It was really revealed via a support document, which is, an awesome Microsoft way to do things. I'm hoping in the next day or something, we're going to get that announcement where Microsoft says, oh, here's the other half of that coin. And it's not all bad news. But right now it's like, guys, what are you doing? Mm-hmm. So it's a little freaky deaky there, but anyway. So last month, Microsoft announced it was partnering with Amazon to bring Xbox Cloud Gaming to select Fire TV sticks. That has now shipped. You need a Fire TV Stick 4K or 4K Max from 2023, which is the newest version. It's basically just an updated version of the Xbox app on the device, so you get it through through their store, and then so it'll be one of the 3 game apps you can get in the Amazon store, and then you can connect a wireless controller via Bluetooth to the Fire TV Stick and access the games that way. Interestingly, will work with PlayStation wireless controllers in addition to Xbox wireless controllers.
Interesting.
Yeah, and there's probably some market out there for people who own a PlayStation
just seems
console.
So cobbled together, right?
Yeah. Yes, fair enough. And if you don't have an Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription, which by the way just went up to $20 a month, Microsoft is allowing people to play Fortnite for free over the Fire TV Stick through their app.
What else would you want to do, really?
Well, Fortnite's free anyway,
probably
isn't it?
Play it on my iPhone is what I'd want to do, but since I can't because I live in the United States, I guess that's what we get.
Right.
So.
Yeah, our stick costs a lot less than an iPhone.
That's yes, it is. Yes, yes, you get what you pay for. But yes, fair enough.
You know what you don't get when you pay for it is when you join Club Twit. I'm just realizing,
Leo, you are the master of the segue.
that the $7 you pay to Club Twit really. I mean, you get so much for that. You get ad-free versions of all the shows. You get the Discord. You get the community. You get shows we don't put out otherwise. You get video from shows like Paul's Hands on
Leo,
Windows.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but would you say it pays for itself?
I think it pays for itself. In fact, it more than pays for itself. It is a deal and a half, because the real reason you might want to join Club Twit is to support what we're doing here. What we're doing here is operating at a deficit, to be kindly. Look, for a long time, we made money. That was great. It was happy. Everybody was happy. But those days kind of are gone. Unless you have a minor TV show on the WB network, you probably don't have a successful podcast. Advertisers, just for some reason, they think, podcasting's old hat. But if you like podcasts and you want to keep them going, one way you can do that is by supporting us. So I'd like to invite you to join Club Twit. $7 a month. You get like all those benefits plus the good feeling that you're helping keep Twit alive. We are doing everything we can to cut costs. We're shutting down the studios in a couple of months. We'll do everything from home, and that'll help. But really what we do need is you. Twit.tv/club-twit. You can join the club, or you can watch these two starve. It's up to you.
Wait, what? Oh, the puppy gets it? What's happening?
The puppy gets it. Or the puppy gets it.
One wrong move.
One wrong move. All right. It's time for the back of the book. And Paul Thurrott kicks us off with his tip of the week. And there is, by the way, I should just let you know, there is heavy voting going on right now that Mary Jo come in and hit you with a pillow before the show's over. I just want to mention
good thing for me, she can't hear any of this. So.
Yeah,
nice.
Lucky thing. All right, your tip of the week, sir.
They might have the stream on in the other room. You know?
Uh-oh.
My back is
really
to the
now.
door.
Uh-oh.
So last year, November-ish, I don't know, I bought what's called the Affinity V2 Ultimate Suite or whatever. So it's Affinity Photo 2, Designer 2, and Publisher 2 across Windows, Mac, and iPad. I've actually not tried the iPad app. I should look at those. And honestly, I really like these apps. Well, I really like Photo. I don't use the other two, but it's a good solid alternative to Adobe Photoshop Elements anyway. So I have been testing Adobe Photoshop Elements lately for the AI stuff, but there's something clean and fast and good about Photo, which I like, Affinity Photo. And at the time I bought it, it was on some kind of a nice sale. And so right now, Affinity is having a sale again. So all their stuff is 50% off. You can buy the apps individually just on whatever platform you want, or all three. You can buy the whole suite, any platform, all platforms. It's your choice. So 50% off is a great price. But they are trying, of course, to get people to switch over from Adobe. And they are offering like literally free, no obligation. You can use all three of these apps, V2, all platforms. No limitations, no watermarking, no anything for 6 months. 6 months.
That's a good amount of time.
Yeah. You could be a new customer, an old customer. You could, it doesn't matter. It's available to everybody. It's just wide open and it's free. The only thing you have to do is create an account with them.
Right.
So yeah, they might email you or something, but of course, there's no obligation, when that 6 month period ends, the apps are still there. They just won't do the stuff, but they'll offer you the upsell. You don't lose your documents. You don't lose any of your work. There's nothing like that. It's, this is like a no pain, give it a shot. There's no reason not to do this. It's, especially if you use like a Photoshop type thing, it's absolutely worth looking at Photo. Really, really good app. So that's great. Everybody should do this except for me, because I already bought it, but it's good. And then as we've been doing lately, it seems like browsers are just getting updated all over the place. I mentioned Opera GX above. In addition to that, it's been 4 weeks because, my God, every time I turn around, there's a new Firefox. So Firefox 128 is out. They have built-in language translation. I think it's to English. I think it's U.S. English and whatever Canadian is. Canadian
Nice.
English. I know. It's
Really
for U.S.
say
and
Canadian?
Canada.
Come on.
No, it's U.S. It's limited to U.S. and Canada. I'm sorry.
Oh,
Let me say that in a way that actually is English. Yeah. My
We
apologies.
translated everything into Canadian.
It's Canadian. It looks exactly the same. Yeah,
Just
there's
more
like
use.
It's
European
friendlier,
vacation.
yes.
He's using the translator. He's like souffle. The French word for souffle is souffle. Come on, that's not right. Yeah. And then this is an ESR release. This is their extended support release, right? So I think the current one is 115. So for now, you don't have to upgrade, but as of I think October, you're going to be pushed into this if you're on that program. So that's neat. And then, oh God, probably a week or two ago, Vivaldi shipped 6.8 for desktop. Now it is out for iPhone, iPad, and Android too. There's a bunch of crossover there, as you would expect, but also there's some unique features that are only available on one or the other. So I wouldn't buy a phone based on this browser, but if you do use Vivaldi, I like Vivaldi too, by the way, speaking of browsers that nobody uses, but yeah, it's a good little browser. Well, I mean,
how many AI features does it have? Well, then why would I use it?
Actually,
It's three.
I'm sure it has plenty, because that's the one that's got everything, including an email client. built in.
Vivaldi, if anything, is a little too much.
It's
Like,
too much. Yeah.
Like, if you didn't think you could customize something enough, you're wrong. Look at Vivaldi. It's nuts. But some people love that.
Some people love that. No, I agree. All right, Richard, you're up. Run as radio. What's coming?
Yeah, published this morning. One of my conversations for Bill, this is with Rani Borkar, who's a CVP in the silicon side of things. She comes from Intel, and has been making chips. And when she arrived to sit with me to do this interview, she had with her one of the Cobalt 100, the ARM processors, size of a side plate, and let me hold it in my hands. You'll hear it in my voice. I get a little giggly.
I tell me you took a selfie with this thing.
I should have. I couldn't even think to take a picture. I was just staring at it. It's massive. And yeah, we just two hardware geeks going hard, right? For a good 35 minutes or so. But we got to dig into the whole dedicated hardware path. What are these architectural differences with Cobalt? And then also their neural processor called Maya, their NVIDIA alternative, and that path that's going on. She works purely in the cloud space. So this is about expanding Azure compute with dedicated processors. And so we end up in a conversation around just how are these workloads going to be distributed? How do we know this will be a good neural network load? Those kinds of things, as well as just this recognition of this is not a machine that any person would buy. You want to consume this kind of compute by the minute through a cloud provider. And that's why they're making these dedicated machines, because this is what they're now offering. So yeah, both the Cobalt and the Maya, we have a good conversation about them. And I do get down in the weeds on the hardware architecture differences, memory approaches, that kind of thing. She had a good laugh with me because we geeked really fast. So,
nice.
But yeah, brilliant woman. Knows her stuff cold. I got a chance to ask a few hard questions. She's like, you must actually know things to actually even ask that question, and then went driving down into them. So, very, very fun.
Runasradio.com. When people come up to me and they say, can you tell me what Richard Campbell's really like? I often say he's lightly peated with a rich, dark fruit flavor. But
there you go. It's a good line.
Just a hint of peat.
Yeah. Hint of peat. He's Hebridean in his spirit.
Hebridean. That's the correct phrase.
Yes.
Hebridean.
And that's the brown liquor you have for us this week.
Yeah. This was brought to me from the Isle of Raasay by a friend of mine. And it's mostly gone now because it's that good. But notice it does have the export sticker. So this is available at certain specialty shops. They don't make very much of it, so it's tricky to find. So what is Raasay? Well, Raasay is an island, about 24 square miles, a little island between the Isle of Skye, one of the largest of the islands, and the Scottish mainland. So this is the Inner Hebrides. That's dozens of islands, but also includes Islay, Skye, Mull, and all along there.
The
now,
better known Hebrides, but Raasay is a lesser known, right?
Yes. But as opposed to the Outer Hebrides, which also exist.
Yes,
those are the islands that actually create that buffer in the northwestern part of Scotland that makes the Highlands quite a bit milder from those very severe storms. The thing, if you ever look at pictures of the Hebrides Islands, both the inners and the outers, just remember this one thought: these are the rocks that the glaciers couldn't crush. Right? This is hard-bitten land. Ooh. This is, from the glacial period, and the folks that live on them, are serious. It's a challenging place to be. It's incredibly beautiful and harsh, but it's really something. And Raasay itself, the name is actually from Old Norse. It means the Isle of the Roe Deer. Now, why is there a Norse word in the middle of Scotland? Because that's who named it back in the day. Now, there was actually Gaelic colonies on that island and that area going back into the 6th century. But by the 8th century, the Norse folks coming out of Norway and the rest of Scandinavia took control of all of the islands. So there were the Northern Isles, which would be the Shetlands and the Orkneys, and then what they called the Southern Isles ran across the Inner and Outer Hebrides. So from the northwest corner of Scotland all the way down to the southwest corner of Scotland. And actually the central island, the command island, so to speak, was the Isle of Man. that southernmost island between England and Ireland. Now, all of these islands were yielded back to the Kingdom of Scotland in 1266 with the Treaty of Perth, as of course you well know. And from then on, largely ruled by the clans. The local clan for Rothesay was the Clan MacSween, although they were really ruled by the MacLeods from the 15th and 19th century. Rothesay most famous person would have been Bonnie Prince Charlie, who's hit out 2 nights on Rothesay following his defeat at the Battle of Culloden in 1746. Bonnie Prince Charlie is Charles Edward Stuart, the Stuart family, having been in exile, having lost the kingdoms. But there was a bunch of fans of his grandfather, James III. They called them the Jacobites. And so when Bonnie Prince Charlie made his attempt to recapture his kingdom, he landed in northwestern Scotland, and pretty much their first major battle against the English under the Duke of Cumberland was a decisive defeat. So he may have been Bonnie, but it didn't go very well for them. And as much as Bonnie Prince Charlie hid out for a couple of days on Rothesay and then decided it was too easy to find him there, so he fled and was able to escape, the folks of Rothesay suffered brutally. The Duke of Cumberland ordered all buildings razed, all boats destroyed, all livestock killed. And that was actually the kickoff of something they now call the Highland Clearances, which is really what the English was doing up there. This is the beginning of the Industrial Revolution in the late 1700s. And so the agricultural approaches were changing, and they needed to redesign the fields. When you're working fields by hand, you make small fields that people can operate, and you need a lot of bodies. So you have sharecroppers. But as agriculture was advancing, there was this recognition that they needed larger pastures. They needed to break down all those little paddocks and things, and they didn't need so many sharecroppers. So they looked for excuses to evict tenants, and the English would happily put this land up for auction, even though other people believed they owned it and lived on it. And this led to the thing they politely call the Highland Clearances. What they were was literally driving people off these islands, and Rothesay was one of them.
What did they do the clearance out of spite, out of racism, out of genocidal bloodthirst?
I think they did it out of pure profitability.
Profit.
Yeah. No, your farms can now be more productive if you change your land design. So, and they're just Scots on it. Drive them off.
Right.
They're
interesting.
They think they're people.
Well, and this was on for the better part of 100 years. It largely only ends after the Highland potato famine in the 1850s. So, it was quite a stretch.
That's pretty awful.
Well,
that's tough.
Yeah. And so just to recognize, when you talk about Scottish culture, especially this part, that the Hebrideans, this was all that challenging land, and they went through a lot. So, today this island is primarily a tourist island. There's lots of ruins on it because there's been people living on it literally for thousands of years. And a very small native local population. There is a regular ferry run from Sconser over on Skye over to Rothesay, and it runs about every hour. Costs about £20 to bring you and your car across, and you'll be going over there because you want to take some hikes, you want to see some of the ruins. There's a lovely set of bed and breakfasts and a couple of hotels, including now, for the first time in its history, at least legally, a distillery.
Well,
this is
I'm on my way. This sounds wonderful.
There you go.
Yeah.
This is it's simple to get to. You can drive to the Isle of Skye. There is a bridge from the mainland, and then you can take this little ferry across. It runs. Everything is sort of synced on that ferry, which runs, like I said, every half hour or so. The creation. This is a very intentionally built boutique distillery. So Bill Dobby and Alistair Day are friends. They formed a distilling group in 2013. They knew a lot about making whiskey. They spent a long time trying to find a place to build a distillery. They finally committed to the Isle of Rothesay in 2015. They were able to raise some money, and they acquired a building called the Borrowdale House, which has been there since the late 1800s. It was a Victorian mansion. It had gone, in my research, because I am prone to such things, I ended up getting into some archives and saw several articles of the Borrowdale House being restored, the Folliday House falling into ruin, the Borrowdale House being restored again. And so this latest iteration happened in the 2015. It is and it was grown out to be a distillery as well as a hotel, restaurant, visitor center. Like they know what they're doing, and laid up their first barrels in 2020. So you're literally knowing that the Scottish whiskey rules is a minimum of 3 years before you can call it anything. They have only just started production. However, and therein lies the question. I've got some right here. Let me just take a little old sip. And I do know what it tastes like, because you'll notice how little is left in this bottle, because as I've been researching, I've been drinking it. Boy, oh boy. Their intent all along was to create a modern interpretation of a Hebridean whiskey, which largely doesn't exist anymore. Now, because they're on the Isles, there's a limited amount of wood, so peat was a normal factor of a Hebridean whiskey, but not a lot of peat. But most peated whiskeys in the contemporary form that exists today are very high in peat and otherwise sort of simple sweet notes. They were trying to go after those dark fruit notes, the richer notes. But normally this would take a decade plus of laying up barrels to make it true. How do you make a drinkable whiskey in so short of a time with a little organization, including the restaurant and hotel? There's only 25 people that work here. Now it's good because there's only 160 people on the island. Although I imagine it's some folks who can live over on Sconce or on the Skye side and take the ferry over every day. So they bought a pair of small stills, Italian stills, actually. The wash still is only 5,000 liters. The spirit still is 3,600. That's a good ratio. Both have sight glasses, which is unusual, but they have adjustable lie arms. So especially on the wash still, they have their lie arm is actually cooled. They have a water jacket on. They can open and close, and apparently they only use it in certain modes. They also have a small rectifier, which is a kind of column still tied into the spirit still for doing higher alcohols, because they make gin. They make gin used from, and this is a normal practice for a new distillery, right? When you're new, you've just spent all this money on all this equipment, you need to sell product.
Oh, and gin doesn't take as long to mature.
You can make it in a day, right?
Okay.
Like you can crank out gin every week, and you're on resize for a reason. It's not because there's a lot of people around, right? Not a whole lot of local market. You're after a terroir. You're looking for the character. And so the botanicals grow on resize. And so their gins are made with local botanicals. It's got a style all its own.
This sounds really... Have you been?
It's clever. No, this is my friends of mine had been, and it's like, you need to go. I'm
Scots, and I wanted to do the obvious thing, but this sounds kind of interesting.
Well, it's just, and again, this intentionality, like we've been subsumed by the Diageos and the Centaurs and so forth. And not that I have anything necessarily bad to say about them. And I would not be surprised if within 5 years, resize is grabbed by one of these big groups, because these folks knew exactly what they're doing. They know they have a new distillery. They know they have to get product on the market quickly. They've picked a style. They only put out about 94,000 liters in a year, 125,000 bottles total. You know, we talked about Jack Daniels last week that makes 15 million bottles a year. Like, this is a teeny little operation in comparison. So they have a set of washbacks. Like everybody else does. They've got 6 washbacks, again, small, but they use 2 different kinds of yeast. They use a usual distiller's yeast, because that makes standard whiskey. But then they also are using a champagne yeast because it has stronger fruit notes in it. They're also, and the champagne yeast is known as a killer yeast, as in if you put champagne yeast in with any other yeast, all the other yeast dies. So it's a very aggressive yeast. So they have to keep their runs separate. It means their mash tuns need to be super clean each time they're going to do a run, because otherwise everything turns into champagne yeast. They're also splitting up productions and barreling. So keeping their barrels relatively small. They've got a mixture of warehouses. They have a palletized warehouse, which is upright barrels stacked high. And they've got a dunnage warehouse, which is your typical earth floor with horizontal barrels 3 high. And then they're on resize. They're surrounded by the sea, so it's always close. This particular edition, because they've made a few different ones, is the first they called a single malt. They're using only Scottish barley, which is not surprising, but they do use local peat. They split the batch multiple ways. The first thing is that they do runs of the base whiskey with no peat, and then they do runs with peat. And they only do 50 ppm, which is relatively low. Then they split the barrelings as well. They use a variety of different barrels. The number one barrel they use the most is actually Woodford Reserve rye barrels. This is Brown Fornham. Nice. They specifically went for the rye. The mash bill on the rye edition of Woodford is 53% rye, 33% corn, and 14% barley. So that's where they're stealing their spicy note, because they don't have time to get it from the wood. They've got to get it from the whiskey. And they're also not remaking the barrels. And I've talked about this before, that when you buy American bourbon casks, because they're done in U.S. gallons, which are smaller than imperial gallons, they'll tend to take 5 barrels and make them into 4 to get up to the standard, what they call a butt size. They don't do that. They're keeping the barrels small. In fact, they're keeping many barrels smaller because it ages the whiskey's flavors faster. While they're a new shop with small production, they can afford to work with little barrels and get more wood surface onto the alcohol to get more flavors quickly. So beside the rye cask, which is the dominant barrel for them, they're also using chinkapin oak. So this is, as opposed to, this is an American oak, but it's not American white oak, which is Querulus alba. This is Querulus Mullaghbergi. Did I say that right? No, I did not. This is American oak. It's not as common as the white oak, but it is a raw oak. And normally when you use raw oaks like that, it becomes a dominant flavor. It's way too strong, especially if you use them in small barrels. But they do is they char them heavily, toasted and charred, so that they, again, a wrap. You've only got a couple of years to lay up to try and make a product. How do you get as much flavor as possible? So a heavily charred virgin oak barrel, again from America. They're probably not going to use these for very long. You leave that in for 10 years, it's probably undrinkable. They also have a deal with some French wineries down in the south of France. So they have some Bordeaux casks. And so they take a part of that batch, some of the peated, some of the unpeated, and they put it into some Bordeaux casks. So you've got essentially 6 combinations: peated and unpeated, rye, virgin oak, and wine casks to age in. And then they combine them to create all this complexity without a lot of age. So there's no age appellation on there, because it'd be a 3 or a 4, and that's not a good number to put on a bottle. But instead, by using those small barrels, short aging, strong flavors, they're able to make a combination there. Now, I was able to catch a clip of the master distiller working there. And one of the things he said is like, I can't wait to see what happens in 10 years with some of these barrels. But they are going to keep some of the initial barrelings early on. But they found a way to create a fairly unique Hebridean character without having to wait 15 years. No chill filtration, no color. The fact that it's not as pale as it is while still having some color in it means they're not overdoing it on the wine side. This could be dark red if they weren't careful. But they're winning awards for a very young whiskey. It's been 4 years since of them putting stuff in bottles, which, by the way, they do themselves. They have their own bottling facility. So these guys have bought all the 21st century technology to build super modern Scottish whiskey, and then are deliberately making an ultra old school whiskey from it. I think it's another example of a modern boutiquing of the product. Because of the technology that's available today to be able to work in relatively small scale, you can be clever in other ways. So they're completely compliant with the Scottish standards. They're making Scottish whiskey. It's just that in less than 4 years, they have a complicated whiskey. It's crazy, but it's extraordinary. And if you can find a bottle, you're looking at about $85 for this 700 ml bottle. That's not incredibly expensive, but it's not cheap either for a young single malt. And 46%, it's got a little clout. That's kind of the right number. And then one of the reasons they're doing that is because they have no chill filtration, no color. It'll cloud if it was lower alcohol level. So the 46% helps protect it to give it that good look.
Sounds like a lovely tipple.
It's not smoke to impress, right? This is not, I need to lick an ashtray today. This is just it's smoke as a character, as a little flair, right? It's not owning a thing. It's mostly rich fruit notes, right? It's plum and cherry and like strong fruit. But then it's just like, except you set it on fire at some point.
So up here in the wine country, the winemaker is the celebrity. And they move from famous winery to famous winery, and the name, and they go, oh, that's what's her name's. That's going to be good. Is it the same with whiskey? Because this is clearly somebody knew what they were doing when they set this up.
Yes.
Yeah.
No. And I deliberately look for that. And you've seen me do these pieces before where it's like they went and got this great master distiller, worked at these 7 different distilleries. Nope. I don't know who this guy is.
Interesting.
I watched his video of him being interviewed and talking about it. He clearly knows what he's doing. But he was maybe 40, 50 something.
Interesting.
Right? Generally, when we talk about these monster master distillers, they're older people.
Yeah.
So this guy is clearly experienced, but they were doing something different here.
That's great.
But
I love it. They're actually a young crew. I mean, the whole thing is
young crew.
Very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. By the way, they are looking for a front of house person too. So if you're looking for a job on a little island in Scotland, these guys are hiring.
I look good in a suit. Maybe maybe my
you're on an island. You don't really.
How's the internet on the island?
Birthday suit.
Yeah. I know what. You always got Starlink, and goodness knows there's not a tree to be found there. So you'll be able to get a clear shot of the sky.
This really is cool. I definitely want to go.
Blown away by this distillery. Just
how clever.
21st century clever approach to making modern whiskey. You're making an old school whiskey in a totally new way.
Yeah. And I guess the terroir in whiskey is important, right?
I think that's true. I mean, again, they've got local water. It's called, the well is called the well of the pale cow. And they actually have a pale cow as a mascot, a good Scottish long hair.
That's not a very nice thing to call me. Come on.
It's
so the water's local.
Rich.
I mean, the odds are the barley is probably produced elsewhere and pre-ground for them, right?
Sure.
Like they're ordering to spec, which is totally normal. And considering the scale of the operation, like they're not going to do their own maltings. That's not practical. Right. What they've done here is use very contemporary stills with lots more control than typical stills. So they're able to refine their product and an interesting array of barrelings to introduce flavor quickly.
Yeah.
And then make their own bottling. And that is astonishing. It's so intentional, and it got so far. I defy you to say this isn't a 10-plus-year-old whiskey.
That's really cool.
And it's not.
It's such
but
a
it's
great
astonishing.
Story. Such a great story. Isle of Raasay, RaasayDistillery.com, RAASAY, distillery.com. Richard Campbell is at runasradio.com. That's where to get his shows, .NET Rocks and Run As Radio. And, of course, he's here every Wednesday as we do Windows Weekly. So is Paul Thurrott. Thurrott.com is his website. I'm a premium member. You should be, too. Great stuff there. And, of course, his books. Now, the new lean, thin version of his books available at Lean Pub.
I'm putting the lean in Lean Pub, baby.
The Field Guide to Windows 11. Are you going to do the same thing to Windows Everywhere? It's not as big, is it?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
I did all the books.
All right. It's all been compressed. Now smaller for your delectation. Every Wednesday, 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern.
Works. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. It's he's got him sweating to the oldies.
Sweating to the oldies also works.
11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern Time, 1800 UTC. You can watch us live now on every possible live platform. Thanks to the folks at Restream who made this possible. We are on Discord, of course, for our club members. YouTube, as we have been for some time, twit.tv. Actually, it's youtube.com/twit/live. But we're also now on Twitch, back on Twitch, with chat on all of these, too, by the way. We turned the chat on. Live on Kick. Live on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on X.
You're going to be live on Boosteroid?
Boosteroid, if it's yes.
The UK streaming.
Oh yeah, that's right. The game
service.
Streaming platform. Wherever
Watch
we can.
Watch us on your NVIDIA Shield.
Yeah, you probably could. So do watch us live, but you don't have to because on-demand versions of the show are also available at twit.tv/WW. That's our website. There's a YouTube channel dedicated to Windows Weekly, so if you want to share a clip, that's a great way to do that. I have a feeling Richard's Whiskey segments are highly prized clips being shared around. But you can also subscribe to the show, and that way you don't have to think about it. You just get it automatically and listen whenever you want, anytime between Wednesday and Wednesday. Thank you, Paul Thurrott. Thank you, Richard Campbell.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thanks to our esteemed club members who made this show possible. We're very grateful. Thank you. And we will see you next week. Where are you going to be, Paul? Are you going to be back home?
Yes.
He doesn't even know.
I had to think.
Doesn't even.
Yeah, I have some weird travel coming up, but no, I think July pretty much home.
Good. Well, give our love to Mary Jo. It's so nice to see her.
I will.
So unexpected. Richard Campbell, you're going to stay in Madeira Park, or are you going?
No, staying. This is the summer.
Summertime.
Come
It's
on,
the best
man.
time of the year to be in Madeira Park.
This is the summer.
Yeah,
I'm staying
baby.
place.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got the kayaks out, cleaned them all up, fixed them up, so go for a paddle, go harass some otters, the usual.
Thank you so much to the two of you and to all of you who watch and listen, all our winners and our dozers. We thank you, and we'll be back next week for another gripping edition of Windows Weekly. Bye-bye.
Hey, I'm Rod Pyle, editor-in-chief of Ad Astra Magazine, and each week I join with my co-host to bring you This Week in Space, the latest and greatest news from the final frontier. We talk to NASA chiefs, space scientists, engineers, educators, and artists, and sometimes we just shoot the breeze over what's hot and what's not in space, books, and TV. And we do it all for you, our fellow true believers. So whether you're an armchair adventurer or waiting for your turn to grab a slot in Elon's Mars rocket, join us on This Week in Space and be part of the greatest adventure of all time.